They called them just basic work files. They laughed and poured more coffee, acting as if I were merely posturing with a boring spreadsheet. But some things cannot be unseen, and once the line is crossed, there is no going back. When I walked into that living room and saw my classified documents spread across the coffee table like a casual group project, I knew our family dinner was over. The only sound left was the hum of tires on the driveway and the heavy footsteps of people who do not knock. My name is Celeste Sutherland. I am 34 years old, and as I turned my sedan onto the cracked asphalt of the driveway in Briarwood, Ohio, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest. It is a specific physical sensation reserved exclusively for family gatherings, a mix of regression and suffocation. Like trying to squeeze a fully grown adult body back into a prom dress that has not fit in 16 years, the house looked exactly the same as it had when I left for college. The beige siding was peeling slightly near the gutters, and the oak tree in the front yard still dropped acorns that would dent the hood of a car if you were not careful. It was a picture of suburban stability, the kind of place where the biggest crisis should be a broken sprinkler head or a raccoon in the garbage cans. I parked the car and took a moment to breathe. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from a long drive, but the kind that settles into the bones after 3 years of high-intensity risk modeling. I work for the Federal Risk and Continuity Bureau. If you Google it, you will find a very dull website with stock photos of people pointing at whiteboards and a mission statement about infrastructure resilience that is designed to make your eyes glaze over within 10 seconds. That is by design. My family thinks I am a glorified actuary. They think I spend my days calculating insurance premiums for flood zones or arguing about deductibles. I looked at the passenger seat. Sitting there, strapped in with the seatbelt as if it were a toddler, was my matte black briefcase. It is biometric, reinforced, and lined with a mesh that blocks signals. Inside was my agency-issued laptop and a thin stack of physical files I needed to review over the weekend. I told myself it was just light reading, just a few logistical assessments regarding commercial transport hubs, nothing that required a frantic call to a secure line, nothing that could not wait until Monday morning. I was wrong, of course, but at that moment, I just wanted to get through the anniversary dinner without screaming. I unbuckled the briefcase and slung the heavy strap over my shoulder. I could have left it in the trunk, but protocol dictates it stays within my line of sight or behind a double lock. Since I did not trust the lock on my old Chevy, it was coming inside with me. The moment I opened the front door, the smell hit me. It was a combination of lemon pledge, pot roast, and that distinct dusty scent of old carpet that never truly gets clean. "Celeste, you made it!" My mother, Marilyn, came bustling out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a floral apron. She looked good for her age, though her smile was tight at the corners. She hugged me, and I felt her stiffen slightly when her arm bumped against the hard shell of the briefcase at my hip. "Hello, Mom," I said, squeezing her back. "Happy anniversary." 35 years, she said, pulling back to look at me. Her eyes darted to the bag. "You brought work?" "Celeste, honestly, it is a weekend. Just some reading. Mom, I promise I will not be on the computer all night." "Well, put it away. Your brother and sister are already here. Trevor is making mojitos, and Brianna is showing your father the listing for that new colonial on Highland." I walked into the living room, the briefcase heavy against my side. The television was on, muted, showing a football game. My father, Gordon, was sitting in his recliner, holding a tablet while my sister leaned over his shoulder. "Hey, stranger," Brianna said, looking up. She smiled, and it was that dazzling, practiced smile she used on prospective homebuyers. Brianna was the success story everyone understood. She sold houses. She made money. She had a husband named Mark who played golf. It was all very digestible. "Hi, Bree," I said. "Hi, Dad?" Gordon looked up from the tablet. "There she is, the mystery woman," he grinned, but there was that familiar edge to it. "Did you survive the traffic? Or did you have to take a classified route?" "Traffic was fine. Dad, I said, keeping my voice level. I walked over to the corner near the bookshelf and set the briefcase down. I positioned it so it was wedged between the wall and the heavy oak armchair, out of the way but visible from the dining room. You treat that bag like it contains the nuclear launch codes. Trevor's voice boomed from the kitchen doorway. My brother, the marketing genius. He walked in holding a tray of drinks, wearing a polo shirt that was slightly too tight across the chest. He ran a boutique agency in downtown Columbus and treated every family conversation like a pitch meeting. Just work, Trev, I said, accepting a glass. How is the agency? Crushing it, he said, winking at Dad. We just landed the account for the new stadium district. Big money, lots of visibility. Unlike some people who work in the shadows. He clinked his glass against mine. It was a joke. I knew it was a joke, but the liquid in my glass sloshed over the rim and made my hand sticky. I do not work in the shadows, I said, wiping my hand on my jeans. I work in an office building with fluorescent lights and bad coffee, just like you. Yeah, but I can show people what I do, Trevor laughed. I can point to a billboard and say, I did that. You? You just tell us you are analyzing risk. What does that even mean? Celeste? Are you checking if the break room runs out of donuts? Something like that, I said. I took a long sip of the drink. It was too sweet. Dinner was an exercise in endurance. We sat around the mahogany table that my parents had bought when I was 6. The roast was dry, and the vegetables were overcooked, just the way Dad liked them. The conversation flowed easily between Trevor, Brianna, and my parents. They spoke a common language of local gossip, property values, and renovation costs. I ate quietly, nodding at the appropriate times. I tried to be present, I really did, but the back of my mind was already drifting to the contents of my briefcase. The file I had taken with me was a preliminary report on supply chain vulnerabilities in the Midwest rail system. There were anomalies in the shipping manifests that did not add up. Weight discrepancies, timestamps that were off by mere minutes but occurred in patterns that suggested automation rather than human error. Celeste? I blinked. The table was looking at me. Sorry, I said. What? I asked if you are seeing anyone, Mom said, her voice dropping to that hushed tone she used for tragedies and my love life. Brianna said you did not bring a +1. I am busy, Mom. Work is intense right now. Dad snorted. He cut a piece of meat with unnecessary force. Intense. You sit at a computer. Celeste, what is intense about it? My back hurts from 40 years at the plant. That is intense. Staring at a screen? That is just tedious. It is mental stress, Gordon, Mom said, though she did not sound convinced. She has deadlines. We all have deadlines, Trevor chimed in. He was twirling his fork. I have a client breathing down my neck for a campaign launch on Monday. You know what I did? I brought my laptop. But I left it in the car. Because family comes first. Right. Bree? Right. Brianna agreed. Celeste, you act like the world is going to end if you do not check your email for 12 hours. I forced a smile. The muscles in my cheeks ached. If only they knew. If only I could tell them that the reason I check my email is precisely because we run simulations on how likely it is for the world, or at least the grid, to actually end. It is just a busy quarter, I said. End of fiscal year reporting. Everything is a secret with you, Brianna said, shaking her head. Remember when you told us you were going to D.C. for a conference, and we found out later you were in Nevada for 3 weeks? That was training, I said automatically. See? Trevor pointed his fork at me. Evasive. I bet she has got, basic work files in that fancy bag. Just spreadsheets and HR manuals, but she locks it up like she is James Bond. The table erupted in laughter. Even Mom chuckled. My little secret agent, Dad said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. Maybe she is spying on the neighbors for the homeowners association. I laughed too. I made the sound come out of my throat. Loud enough to register as participation. I let them have it. It was better they thought I was ridiculous than if they knew the truth. But beneath the table, My hands were clenched so hard my fingernails were digging into my palms. It was not anger, exactly. It was isolation. I was sitting 3 feet away from the people who shared my DNA, yet I felt like I was broadcasting from a different planet. After dinner, the dynamic shifted to the living room for coffee and pie. I helped clear the table, grateful for the task. The mundane rhythm of scraping plates and loading the dishwasher was grounding. "Leave the rest, honey," Mom said, patting my arm. "Go join the others. You look exhausted." "I am okay," I said. "I think I might turn in early. Actually, the drive really wiped me out." "Already?" Dad called out from the living room. "The night is young." "Let her go, Dad," Trevor said. "She has probably got to wake up at 4 in the morning to decrypt a message from the president." More laughter. I said my goodnights and walked over to the corner to retrieve my briefcase. As I lifted it, I felt Trevor's eyes on me. "Seriously, though," he said, his voice dropping the playful tone for a split second. "If you need help with Excel or something, just ask. I am a wizard with macros." "I am good. Trev, thanks." I walked up the stairs, the carpet tread worn smooth in the center from decades of footsteps. My old bedroom was at the end of the hall. Opening the door was like stepping into a museum exhibit dedicated to the year 2008. The walls were still painted a soft lavender. My high school diploma was framed on the wall, next to a corkboard covered in faded movie tickets and photos of friends I had not spoken to in 10 years. I placed the briefcase on the small desk by the window. I did not open it immediately. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out a portable travel lock. It is a simple device, a piece of red metal that fits into the strike plate of the door frame, preventing the door from being opened even if someone has a key. I use it in hotels. I use it in rentals. And tonight, I used it in the house where I grew up. I slotted the metal piece in and closed the door. It clicked shut. I fastened the red handle in place. It was overkill. I knew it was overkill. My father was not a spy. He was a retired factory foreman. My brother was not a saboteur. He was a loudmouth with a marketing degree. But the training does not turn off just because you are in the suburbs. The training says, secure your perimeter. I changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, brushing my teeth in the attached half bath. The silence of the house was heavy. I could hear the muffled sounds of the television downstairs. The occasional burst of laughter. I sat on the edge of the twin bed and looked at the briefcase. Just a quick check. That was what I promised myself. Just verify the hash values on the files. Make sure the synchronization with the server was complete, and then sleep. I sat at the desk and pressed my thumb against the biometric scanner. The latch hissed open. I lifted the lid. The screen of the laptop was dark. I powered it on, typing in my 32-character password. While the system booted, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They paused outside my door. I froze. "I do not know. Marilyn." My father's voice came through the wood. He was whispering, but the house was old, and the gaps beneath the doors were wide. "It is weird. Who puts a lock on a bag like that?" "She has always been private," my mother whispered back. "Since she took this job, she is just different, closed off." "It is not just private," Dad said. "It is arrogant, like she thinks she is better than us, sitting up there with her secrets. What is she doing that is so important she can't even talk to her own father about it? It is probably nothing, probably just pushing paper and acting like it is classified to feel special." "Shh," Mom said. "She might be awake." "Let her hear," Dad grumbled. "Maybe she will come down and join the family for once." Their footsteps creaked away down the hall, fading toward the master bedroom. I sat there, staring at the booting screen. The words did not sting like an insult. They stung like a paper cut. Thin, sharp, and annoying. They thought I was doing this for ego. They thought I locked my life away because I wanted to feel superior. They had no idea that the reason I did not talk about my work was because if I told them what I really knew, about the fragility of the power grid, about the dirty bombs tracked in cargo ships, About the sleeper cells monitoring water treatment plants. They would never sleep again. I carried the silence so they could have the noise. I carried the fear so they could complain about traffic and football. I took a deep breath and looked at the screen. The desktop loaded. A plain black background with a single toolbar. I reached for the physical folder in the briefcase, intending to cross-reference a shipping manifest with the digital log. My hand was halfway to the paper when the laptop let out a sharp, two-tone chime. It was not the email notification sound. It was not the calendar reminder. It was a sound I had only heard twice in 3 years. A bright red window popped up in the center of the black screen. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic urgency. Priority: do not delay. User: Sutherland. C: clearance. Tier 4. Message: flagged anomaly detected in Sector 7. 7 data set, geolocation match confirmed. Immediate review required. My heart hammered against my ribs. Sector 7 was transport and logistics, the Midwest hub. I clicked the notification. The screen flooded with data streams, lines of code, maps, and timestamps. I scanned them, my eyes adjusting from daughter mode to analyst mode. In a split second, the anomaly was not a glitch. It was a breach. Someone had accessed a dormant node in the rail switching network, and they had done it 40 minutes ago. I looked at the time in the corner of the screen. It was 10 at night. I looked at the map on the screen. The geolocation pin was pulsing. It was not in China. It was not in Russia. It was right here in Ohio, and Celeste knew her weekend had just changed colors. It was no longer a beige holiday of endurance. It was a code red. The red alert on my screen was not a suggestion. It was a mandate. In the world of federal risk assessment, a Tier 4 anomaly meant that the theoretical scenarios we discussed in windowless conference rooms, the ones involving cascading infrastructure failure and mass panic, were trying to migrate from the whiteboard to the real world. I immediately shifted gears. The exhaustion from the drive and the annoyance of the dinner table conversation evaporated. Replaced by a cold, crystalline focus, I needed to turn my childhood bedroom into a sensitive compartmented information facility, or a SCIF, which is government speak for a room where secrets stay secret. This was essentially impossible in a suburban house with drywall thin enough to hear a sneeze 2 rooms over. But I had to try. I reached into my bag and pulled out my smart card, slotting it into the side of the laptop. The screen flickered as the encryption handshake verified my biometrics. I pulled up the secure VPN tunnel, watching the connection strength bars turn green. My hands moved with muscle memory, arranging the physical workspace. Notebook on the left, token generator on the right, nothing else. A clean desk is a secure desk. The data packet I had to review was massive. It was a comprehensive audit of transport security vulnerabilities across the Midwest corridor. We are talking about bridges, rail switching yards, commercial way stations, and cargo holding facilities. The alert had flagged a sequence of irregular access patterns. Someone was testing the locks on the back doors of the country's supply chain, and they were doing it with frightening efficiency. I was 3 minutes into cross-referencing a timestamp log from a rail yard in Cincinnati when the first assault on my perimeter began. Knock, knock, knock. It was a cheerful, rhythmic rapping. The kind that implies the person on the other side has already decided they are coming in regardless of your answer. Celeste? Honey? It was my mother. I did not answer immediately. I hit the privacy screen key on my laptop, which instantly dimmed the display to black, and swiveled in the chair. I am working, Mom, I said, my voice loud enough to carry through the door but firm enough to discourage entry. The doorknob jiggled, then it jiggled harder. The portable red lock I had installed held fast, rattling against the strike plate but refusing to yield. Why is this locked? Her voice shifted from maternal sweetness to mild affront. Celeste, open the door. I brought you some pecan pie. You barely touched dessert. I am not hungry. Mom, please, I really need to focus. For heaven's sake, she sighed, the sound loud against the wood. It is 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday. What could possibly be so urgent that you have to barricade yourself in? You are acting like you are building a bomb in there. The irony was that I was trying to prevent one. Metaphorically speaking, or perhaps literally, I stood up and walked to the door, speaking close to the jam. It is just a protocol. Mom, when I have client files open, I cannot have interruptions. It is a privacy regulation. It is my house, Celeste, she shot back, the hurt bleeding into her tone. There is no privacy regulation against your mother giving you pie. Who do you think is going to see? The cat? We are family. Nobody here cares about your spreadsheets. I will come down later. I lied. Please, I heard her huff, a sharp exhale of breath that I could practically feel through the paint. Fine, but do not blame me if it gets cold. You are so uptight. Celeste, you need to learn to relax. Her footsteps retreated. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding and returned to the desk. I deactivated the privacy screen and dove back into the numbers. The data was troubling. The anomaly wasn't a brute force hack. It was a credential misuse. Someone was using valid login IDs to access maintenance schedules for freight elevators and loading dock security cameras. It was quiet. It was professional. It looked like legitimate work, except for the fact that the access was happening at 3 a.m. local time. From IP addresses that bounced through servers in Estonia and the Cayman Islands, I was scribbling a note about a potential compromised admin account when the second wave hit. The door handle rattled again, but this time it was accompanied by a scratching sound, like someone trying to pick a lock with a credit card. Seriously? I shouted, spinning around. Whoa, easy. It was Trevor. Just checking if the fortress is impenetrable. Spoiler alert, that travel lock is garbage. I could kick this door in with my left foot. Go away. Trevor. Come on, let me in. I want to see the setup. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. I am recording a segment for my podcast tomorrow about the hustle economy. I want to get a soundbite of you typing furiously. It adds texture. Ambient work noise is huge right now. I stood up, walked to the door, and undid the red lock. I opened the door 3 inches, blocking the gap with my body. My face was inches from his. He was holding his iPhone up, the voice memo app recording. Turn that off, I said. My voice was ice. Trevor blinked, surprised by my intensity. He lowered the phone. Jesus, Celeste, it is just for the pod. My sister, the corporate drone, grinding on the weekend. It is relatable content. I am not content, I said. And what is on my screen is not for your listeners. It is not for anyone. Do not record me. Do not record this room. He rolled his eyes, a gesture so teenage it belonged in the high school hallway of my memory. You are so dramatic. Let me guess. You are auditing a mid-sized paper company? Reviewing the budget for paper clips? Let me see one page. Just one. I bet I can make it sound exciting. No, I will blur the numbers. I just want the visual of the charts. People love charts. Trevor, I said, leaning in. If you point that camera at my desk, I will smash your phone. And I will not reimburse you, he laughed, a sharp bark of amusement. Okay, killer instinct. I like it. But seriously, you need to chill. You are vibrating. It is just work. The world is not going to end if you take 5 minutes to give your brother a quote. He did not know that the file I had just minimized was titled Catastrophic Failure Modes for Hazardous Material Transport. Good night, Trevor. I slammed the door and re-engaged the lock. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer effort of containment. It was like trying to hold back a flood with a piece of plywood. I went back to the desk. I had to focus. I needed to map the access points. The intruder was looking for something specific. They were not browsing. They were searching for structural schematics. 10 minutes passed. I was deep in a subdirectory regarding bridge load-bearing limits when the doorknob turned again, slow, deliberate. There was no knock this time, just the heavy, authoritative voice of my father. Celeste, I did not get up. I am working, Dad. I am looking for the spare batteries. They used to be in the top drawer of that desk. They are not here, I said, typing a command line to isolate the suspicious user ID. I checked the drawers. They are empty. Open the door. Celeste. It was not a request. It was the voice he used when I was 16 and missed curfew. I cannot right now. Silence stretched for 5 seconds, heavy, oppressive. You know, he said, his voice lower, vibrating against the wood. In this house, we do not have secrets. We are a family. We share everything. Food, money, problems. I am not hiding a problem. Dad, I am doing my job. Your job, he scoffed. You act like you are the director of the CIA. You are an analyst. Celeste, you look at numbers. You are making a spectacle of yourself to make us feel small, to make us feel like we do not matter enough to know what you are doing. That is not true. Then open the door. No. Fine, he said. The menace in his voice was quiet, which made it worse. Just remember whose roof you are under, and remember that the master key to that bedroom is still on my keyring downstairs. I do not use it because I respect you, but do not push me. If I want to know what is in my own house, I will look. The threat hung in the air long after his footsteps faded. My stomach turned over. He was talking about boundaries as if they were insults. To him, my privacy was an act of aggression. He truly believed that his status as my father gave him clearance to inspect my life as if it were his property. I rubbed my temples. I needed to finish this triage. I needed to identify the target and escalate it to the overnight team at headquarters. I was typing a summary of the breach when a soft knock came. Celeste? It is Bri. I sighed. What, Brianna? I just wanted to say, don't be mad at Dad. He just misses you. He feels like you are pushing us away. I stared at the closed door. I am not pushing anyone away. I am working on a deadline. But you are locked in, Brianna said gently. It feels aggressive, like you do not trust us. We are all downstairs playing Scrabble. It feels weird without you. You're acting like a stranger, like an outsider who just rented a room. I am doing something important. Bree, is it more important than family? The question was a trap. It was the classic weapon of the guilt-dependent family unit. If you choose yourself, or your career, or your duty, you are betraying the blood. It is not a competition, I said, my voice weary. Just come down for 10 minutes, she pleaded. Leave the laptop. It will be there when you get back. Nobody is going to touch your precious files. We promise. Just be a sister for 5 minutes instead of a whatever you are. I looked at the clock. 11:30 at night. If I did not go down, they would keep coming. They would escalate. Dad might actually get the key. Trevor might actually try to pick the lock. The distraction was more dangerous than the pause. Fine, I said. 5 minutes? I stood up. I saved my progress. I locked the operating system. I took the physical files, the 3 pages of printed schematics I'd been annotating, and placed them inside the briefcase. I closed the lid of the laptop. I put the laptop in the briefcase. I snapped the latches shut. I spun the combination dial. I opened the door. Brianna was standing there, smiling sympathetically. See? She said. Was that so hard? I walked past her to the landing. I need to make something very clear, I said, stopping at the top of the stairs so my voice would carry down to where Dad and Trevor were sitting. They looked up. I am coming down for a drink, I announced. But the room stays locked, and nobody goes near that door. Nobody touches the bag. Nobody touches the papers. Nobody touches the laptop. Do you understand? This is not a request. It is a federal requirement. Trevor snorted from the couch. Federal requirement. Listen to her. Okay, Agent 99. We promise not to touch your homework. Dad shook his head, looking at his Scrabble tiles. So dramatic. Fine. Come sit down. Nobody wants your files. Celeste. They nodded. They agreed. But I saw it in their eyes. I saw the dismissal. They thought I was playing a game. They thought I was a child playing dress-up in a suit, pretending my toy papers were real. They did not believe in the boundary because they did not respect the person drawing it. I went downstairs. I drank a glass of water. I endured 15 minutes of Trevor making jokes about how much money he was going to make on the stadium deal, and Dad complaining about the neighbor's new fence. When I finally extracted myself and went back upstairs, I felt a knot of anxiety in my gut. I checked the travel lock. It was still in place. I opened the door. The room was dark. The briefcase was exactly where I had left it. I sat down and exhaled. I was paranoid. They were annoying. Yes, but they were not malicious. I opened the briefcase. I booted up the laptop. I reopened the report to continue my analysis. I scrolled down to the section I had been reading before Brianna knocked. It was a list of high-value targets identified by the threat actor's search history. They were scouting locations for a potential physical breach, warehouses, distribution centers, places where dangerous materials sit unguarded over the weekend. My eyes scanned the list of addresses: Terminal B, Cleveland Port Authority, Distribution Node 4, Akron, Briarwood, Industrial Park, Sector 4, the Old Textile Depot. My heart stopped. I read it again: Briarwood Industrial Park. That was 5 miles from this house, and then the memory clicked. It hit me like a physical blow. At dinner, 2 hours ago, Trevor bragging about his new client. We just landed the account for the new stadium district. Big money. But the real cash cow is the renovation project at the old textile depot. They are turning it into a logistics hub for the whole region. My client bought it last month. I have the keys. I am going there tomorrow to scope it out for the drone shoot. I stared at the screen. The location on the red alert list, the location the intruders were targeting for a structural bypass, was the exact same building where my brother was holding the keys and planning a content creation tour. The threat wasn't just in my computer. It was sitting on the coffee table downstairs, probably next to Trevor's mojito. The line between my boring work and my family's reality had just vanished. The clock on the lower right corner of my monitor read 3:15 in the morning. My eyes felt like they had been scrubbed with sandpaper, and the muscles in my neck were coiled so tight they were practically vibrating. The silence in the house was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket that contrasted sharply with the digital chaos screaming across my screen. I had spent the last 4 hours dissecting the connection between the Briarwood Industrial Park and the anomaly in the federal database. It was not a coincidence. In my line of work, we are trained to believe that coincidence is just a lazy word for a pattern you have not identified yet. The threat actors, whoever they were, had not just stumbled upon the old textile depot. They had targeted it. They had mapped its electrical grid, its loading bay dimensions, and its proximity to the main rail line, and my brother. The marketing genius who thought cloud security meant keeping his iPhone dry when it rained, was holding the physical keys to the front door. I needed to visualize it. I am a tactile thinker. When the data gets too dense, when the rows of SQL queries start to blur into a wall of white text, I need to see the shape of the problem. I reached into the side pocket of my briefcase and pulled out a portable thermal printer. It is a small black brick, about the size of a stapler, that prints on rolls of heat-sensitive paper. It is quiet, efficient, and leaves no ink ribbon to be recovered. I connected it to the laptop via a hardline cable, never Bluetooth, never Wi-Fi, and hit print. The device hummed, a low, insect-like sound, as it spat out 3 long strips of paper. The first strip was the timeline of the digital intrusions. The second was the physical blueprint of the textile depot. The third was a network graph showing the relationships between the compromised accounts. I grabbed a red pen and began to circle the intersection points. I laid the strips out on the desk, weighing the corners down with my phone and a bottle of water. To an outsider, these papers looked incredibly boring. They looked like basic work files, a floor plan, a calendar, a flowchart with circles and arrows. There were no top secret on stamps in red ink like in the movies. Real intelligence looks mundane. It looks like a schedule for a construction crew. But if you knew how to read it, That floor plan was a kill box. That calendar was a countdown. And that flowchart showed exactly how a localized power surge at the depot could derail a freight train carrying hazardous chemicals 3 miles west of here. I was staring at the timeline, trying to figure out why the hackers had paused their activity for 2 days in November, when my phone buzzed against the paper. I jumped. My nerves were shot. I looked at the screen. It was a text message. Sender, Trevor. Time, 3:22 in the morning. I frowned. Trevor should have been asleep hours ago. He had been bragging about his early rise grind set all evening. I opened the message. Hey, sorry to text so late. Big pitch tomorrow for the depot thing. I cannot sleep. Wish me luck? Feel like I'm walking a tightrope on this one. I stared at the glowing letters. Trevor never asked for luck. Trevor demanded attention. He expected success, and he dismissed failure as someone else's fault. Wish me luck was the language of uncertainty. It was the language of someone who was in over their head. Why was he awake? Was he just nervous about the marketing presentation? Or did he sense, on some subconscious level, that the client he was dealing with was dangerous? I typed back, "You will be fine. Go to sleep." I deleted it. Too cold. I typed, "Good luck." I sent it. I turned back to the papers. I needed to secure this. I had enough for a preliminary situation report. I needed to upload my findings to the FRCB secure server, flag the textile depot as a Tier 1 physical threat, and recommend immediate surveillance on the property. I typed up the summary. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Suspected physical compromise of Sector 4 via civilian access. Asset confirmed as Old Textile Depot. Recommendation: deploy tactical observation unit immediately. I hit send. The upload bar crawled across the screen. Upload complete. I exhaled. The adrenaline crash hit me instantly. My head spun. I needed water. Real water, not the warm, stale liquid in the bottle on my desk. I began the lockdown procedure. I unplugged the thermal printer. I rolled up the 3 strips of paper. I was about to put them into the shredder bag, a specialized pouch I carried that chemically dissolves paper, when I hesitated. I might need them again in the morning to cross-reference with the response team's data. I decided to keep them. I placed the rolled-up papers inside the main compartment of the briefcase. Right on top of the laptop, I reached for the lid of the briefcase to close it. "Celeste." The voice came from downstairs, muffled but piercing. It was my mother. "Celeste, are you still up?" I froze. I glanced at the door. I had removed the red travel lock earlier when I went down for water and had not put it back because I thought everyone was asleep. I had just turned the regular thumb-turn lock on the handle. "Celeste!" She was at the bottom of the stairs now. "Come down for a minute." "Just 1 minute. I cannot find the remote, and your father woke up and he is grumpy." "Mom, I am sleeping!" I yelled back. Lying. "I can see the light under your door. Come on, honey. Please, he is driving me crazy." I groaned. It was a classic Marilyn Sutherland tactic. Feign incompetence with technology to force an interaction. I looked at the briefcase. The laptop was inside. The papers were inside. The lid was open. "I am coming," I shouted. I slammed the lid of the briefcase shut. I heard the latches click. In my mind, I executed the full security protocol. Close lid, snap latches, spin combination dials to scramble the code, loop cable lock around the desk leg, but my body was running on 3 hours of sleep and a toxic cocktail of cortisol and caffeine. I snapped the latches. Click, click. I stood up. The room spun slightly. I walked to the door. I unlocked it, stepped out into the hallway, and pulled the door shut behind me. I checked the handle. Locked. I went downstairs. That 1 minute was a lie. Of course. It was never 1 minute. I found Mom in the living room. Dad was not even there. He was back asleep in the bedroom. The television was off. "Where is Dad?" I asked, blinking in the harsh light of the kitchen where she was standing. "Oh, he went back to bed," she said, waving a hand dismissively. She was slicing a pound cake. "But since you are up, sit down. Have a slice. You look pale. Celeste, you look like a ghost. Mom, I really need to. Sit, she commanded, sliding a plate across the island counter. You know, I was looking at old photo albums today, while you were locked away in your cave. She pulled a leather-bound book from the counter. She must have had it ready. It was an ambush. Look at this, she said, opening it to a page protected by crinkling plastic. It was a photo of me, Trevor, and Brianna on a beach in Florida. I was maybe 12. Look how happy you looked. You used to smile with your teeth. Now you just give us that tight little polite smile. I smile, Mom. Not like this, she said, tapping the photo. What happened to this girl? Did the government take her? She meant it as a joke, but her eyes were sad. I grew up, Mom. People change. Trevor has not changed, she argued. Brianna has not changed. They grew up, but they are still them. You? You are like a visitor, a polite guest who tips well but leaves early. I took a bite of the cake. It was dry. I chewed mechanically. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that the reason I was a visitor was that I spent my life staring into the abyss so she could bake cakes in a warm kitchen. But I could not say that. I am just tired, I said. This project is really demanding. Is it worth it? She asked suddenly. The money? Is it worth being so lonely? I am not lonely. You are 34, and you are eating pound cake with your mother at 3 a.m. because you cannot sleep. That is lonely. Celeste, I put the fork down. I am going to bed. Okay, she sighed. Okay, go back to your secrets. I walked back up the stairs. My legs felt like lead. The conversation had drained the last reserve of energy I had. It was not just the work. It was the emotional tax of being in this house. I reached my door. I unlocked it. I stepped inside. The room was dark, lit only by the street lamp outside casting long shadows across the floor. I looked at the desk. The black silhouette of the briefcase was there, closed. I walked over to the bed and collapsed. I did not even change out of my sweatpants. I pulled the quilt up to my chin. Did I spin the dials? The thought floated up through the fog of sleep. I snapped the latches. I heard them click. The case is hard shell. It is fine. The door is locked. I am inside. The house is locked. It is fine. I fell asleep before I could answer my own question. The morning sun hit me like a slap in the face. I woke up with a gasp, disoriented. The room was bright. The clock read 7:30. I felt that sticky, groggy feeling of waking up after high-stress sleep. I needed to move. I needed to burn off the residual anxiety. I rolled out of bed. The house was silent. Sunday morning. They would sleep until 9. I grabbed my running shoes. I looked at the briefcase on the desk. It sat there, impassive and black, exactly where I had left it. I did not check it. Why would I? I was in the room. The door had been locked all night. I was the only one with the key. I went to the door, unlocked it, and stepped out. I turned, and out of habit, the deep, ingrained habit of a paranoid professional, I locked the bedroom door from the outside using the key I kept on a chain around my wrist. I went downstairs, drank a glass of water, and slipped out the back door. The air outside was crisp and cold. Ohio in the morning has a specific smell, damp earth and pine. I started to run. I ran fast. I ran until my lungs burned and the cold air felt like knives in my chest. I ran past the manicured lawns of Briarwood, past the houses that looked exactly like ours. I ran to clear the data from my head. I ran to stop seeing the timeline of the textile depot. For 40 minutes, I was not an analyst. I was just a body in motion. I felt safe. I felt human. I convinced myself that I had overreacted the night before. The red alert was managed. The report was sent. The response team would handle the depot. My family was just annoying, not a threat vector. I turned the corner back onto our street. My heart rate was slowing down. I felt better. I would go home, take a shower, maybe actually apologize to Mom for being short with her. We could have a nice Sunday breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, normalcy. I jogged up the driveway. The house looked peaceful. I went in through the back door. The kitchen was still empty. I grabbed an apple from the bowl and walked toward the stairs. As I climbed, I wiped sweat from my forehead. I was thinking about the shower. I was thinking about the hot water. I reached the top of the landing. I looked down the hall toward my room, and I stopped. The apple slipped from my hand and hit the carpet with a dull thud. The door to my bedroom was open. Not wide open, just a crack, a sliver of darkness against the white frame. I stood there, frozen. My brain tried to reject what I was seeing. I locked it. I know I locked it. I have the key on my wrist. But the gap was there, about 2 inches, enough to see that the latch was not engaged. The silence of the house suddenly felt different. It was not peaceful anymore. It was predatory. I moved. I did not run. I moved with the silent. Rolling step they teach you in tactical evasion training. I pushed the door open with my fingertips. The room looked mostly the same. The bed was unmade. The desk was there. But the briefcase, it was moved. It was shifted maybe 4 inches to the left. I knew because I had aligned it parallel with the edge of the mouse pad. Now, it was crooked. I walked over to it. My breath was shallow. I looked at the latches. They were snapped shut. But the combination dials. I leaned in close. The left dial was set to 000. The right dial was set to 000. The factory default. I had not spun them. I had forgotten. I had let the 1 minute with Mom interrupt the sequence, and someone had come in, found the latches unlocked, opened it, and then, crucially, they had closed it back up. But they had not spun the dials either, or maybe they did not know they needed to. My stomach dropped out of my body. The papers, the timeline, the map of the depot with the red circles. I popped the latches. I lifted the lid. The laptop was there. The papers were there. But the order was wrong. I had put the timeline on top. Now, the map of the textile depot was on top. Someone had taken them out. Someone had looked at them. Someone had put them back. I spun around, scanning the room. Who? When? I was gone for 40 minutes. My eyes swept the floor, and then I saw it. Under the desk, half hidden by the wastebasket, a small, crumpled piece of yellow paper. A sticky note. It must have fallen off someone's shirt, or stuck to their shoe. I knelt down and picked it up. It was torn in half. There was writing on it, a hasty scrawl in blue ballpoint pen. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was not mine. It was not Mom's loopy cursive. It was not Dad's block letters. It was jagged, rushed. I read the 3 words visible on the torn fragment. Scale it up. I did not walk down the stairs. I descended like a stone dropping through water, heavy and fast, pulled by a gravity that felt sickeningly inevitable. The torn yellow sticky note was crushed inside my fist, the edges digging into my palm, but I could barely feel it. The only sensation I had was the pounding of blood in my ears, a rhythmic thudding that sounded like a warning siren. I reached the bottom of the staircase and rounded the corner into the living room. The scene that greeted me was so domestic, so horrifyingly casual, that for a split second, my brain refused to process the danger. It looked like a Sunday morning commercial for family togetherness. Sunlight was streaming through the bay windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. There was a pot of fresh coffee on a trivet. There was a plate of bagels, and there, spread across the oak coffee table, the same table where we used to play Monopoly and stack magazines, was the classified infrastructure analysis of the Midwest supply chain. It was not just a few papers. It was everything. They had emptied the briefcase. The thermal printouts I had generated at 3 a.m. were unrolled and flattened under coasters and heavy books to keep them from curling. The timeline of the cyber attacks was near the sugar bowl. The network graph showing the compromised nodes was under my father's elbow, and the blueprint, the structural schematic of the old textile depot with my red ink circles identifying the weak points, was center stage. Right next to a vase of tulips, my father, Gordon, was leaning forward in his armchair, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. scrutinizing the timeline as if he were reading the sports section. My mother, Marilyn, was sitting on the sofa. She held a silver paperclip in her hand and was actually organizing the pages. She was clipping the threat assessment summary to the personnel vulnerability list. She was tidying up my classified intelligence, and Trevor was standing by the window, holding his phone up. He was moving it slowly over the blueprint, tilting it to get the best angle, maximizing the natural light. "Morning, sleepyhead," Marilyn said. Looking up, she smiled. It was a genuine, warm smile. "We did not want to wake you. You looked so tired last night." I stood frozen in the archway. The air in the room felt thin, as if they had sucked all the oxygen out of it. "What?" I said, my voice coming out as a rasp. "Is this?" Marilyn waved the paperclip dismissively. "Oh, we were just curious. You made such a fuss about your work last night, acting like it was the nuclear codes. Dad went up to check on you and saw the bag was open. We just wanted to see what the big deal was." "It was not open," I said. "I locked the door." "The door was sticky," Gordon muttered without looking up from the paper. "You know how that old latch is. Besides, we are your parents. We have a right to know what is stressing you out." He tapped the paper with a thick finger. "This is just shipping schedules, Celeste, and some floor plans. Honestly, I do not know why you were being so dramatic. It is just basic work files. It looks like the kind of stuff I used to manage at the warehouse in the 90s. Basic work files. The phrase hit me like a slap. They looked at a document detailing how to bypass the pressure valves on a hazardous chemical container, and they saw a shipping schedule. They looked at a list of compromised credentials for federal agents, and they saw a staff list. "Put it down," I said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I did not shout. I did not scream. I spoke with the flat metallic resonance of a field operative giving a final warning. "Put it down immediately." Marilyn flinched, dropping the paperclip. "Celeste, there is no need to be rude. We are just looking." "You are not looking." I walked forward, my legs moving stiffly. "You are violating a federal chain of custody. You are committing a felony. Every single one of you." Trevor laughed. He lowered his phone and turned to face me, a smirk playing on his lips. "God, listen to her. Felony. You are so extra, Celeste. It is a floor plan for a warehouse. I have seen better blueprints on Zillow." He held up his phone, showing me the screen. "Check this out. I have this new app, Scanner Pro. It auto-detects the edges of the document and flattens the image, removes the glare and everything. Look how crisp that is. Way better than whatever dinosaur tech you guys use at the bureau." I looked at his screen. The image was indeed crisp. It was a high-resolution digital scan of the textile depot blueprints, complete with my handwritten notes about the security blind spots. But I was not looking at the clarity. I was looking at the top right corner of the interface. There was a small icon, a blue cloud with an arrow pointing up, and a thin blue line traveling across the bottom of the screen, uploading one of 3. It was not just taking a picture. It was not saving it to his camera roll. "Trevor," I said, and for the first time, my voice shook. "Is that uploading?" "Yeah," he said casually. "It syncs to my cloud drive automatically, saves space on the phone. Plus, it converts it to PDF instantly. Pretty slick, right?" My vision blurred at the edges. A cloud drive. A public, civilian cloud drive. The moment that file hit a civilian server, it was over. It was not just a breach. It was a dissemination. The metadata, the geolocation, the handwriting. It was all now sitting on a server farm in Virginia or Ireland, accessible to anyone with a brute force script or a stolen password. "Cancel it." I lunged forward. "Trevor, cancel the upload." I reached for his phone. He pulled it back, stepping away from me like we were playing a game of keep-away in the backyard. "Hey, chill out. It is already done. See? Sync complete. Relax, Celeste. Nobody is going to see it. It is in my personal folder." "You idiot," I whispered. You absolute, catastrophic idiot. Gordon slammed his hand down on the coffee table. The coffee cups rattled. That is enough, he roared. He stood up, his face flushing red. You do not talk to your brother like that, and you certainly do not come into this living room and start barking orders at us. We are your family. Celeste, we raised you. We paid for that college degree that got you this fancy job where you think you are better than everyone else. He waved the timeline document in the air. We are trying to take an interest in your life. Your mother sat here and organized these for you because they were a mess in that bag. And this is how you thank us? By calling us felons? By calling your brother an idiot? You have no idea what you are holding, I said, staring at the paper in his hand. That is not a schedule, Dad. That is a kill list. That is a timeline of active cyber terrorism. And you just put your fingerprints all over it. Oh, stop it, Marilyn scoffed. She picked up her coffee. Terrorism. You sound like a conspiracy theorist. It is a list of trains. Celeste, I saw the word Cincinnati. I saw Cleveland. It is just logistics. I looked at them. I looked at their angry, confused, self-righteous faces. They truly did not believe me. They could not believe me. Their world was small and safe, and the idea that I brought something dangerous into it was incompatible with their version of reality. To them, I was just their daughter acting out. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I did not open the keypad. I did not open the contacts. I pressed the power button 5 times in rapid succession, then held the volume down button. It is a silent sequence. It does not call 911. It sends a distress signal directly to the FRCB Watch Center. It transmits my GPS coordinates and a code that signifies asset compromised/critical data exfiltration. The phone vibrated once, a long, low buzz against my palm. The signal was sent. It was done. I had just flagged my own family home as a hostile site. I had just initiated a protocol that would bring men with guns and warrants to my parents' driveway. What are you doing? Brianna asked. I had not heard her come in. She was standing in the doorway leading to the kitchen, holding a mug of tea. She looked from me to the table, then to Trevor. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene, the scattered papers, the open briefcase on the floor. Trevor, she said, her voice quiet. Is that Celeste's work? Yeah, Trevor said, still scrolling on his phone. She is flipping out because I scanned a page. She thinks the CIA is going to rappel through the windows. Brianna walked over to the table. She looked down at the blueprint. She saw the red circles I had drawn. She saw the notes. Primary ingress point unprotected and explosive hazard. She went pale. Trevor, she said, looking up at him, this does not look like basic files. This looks official. Why do you have it on your phone? I just took a picture. God, everyone is so sensitive today. You scanned it? Brianna asked. Why? Because, Trevor shrugged. It is cool. It is the textile depot. I told you. I have the pitch today. This floor plan is way more detailed than the one the real estate agent gave me. It shows the basement levels. It shows the electrical conduits. It is perfect. My stomach turned over. You took it for the pitch? I asked. My voice was dead calm now, the calm of the executioner. I am just going to use it for reference, Trevor said defensively. I mean, look at the detail on the loading docks. It proves I did my homework. Clients love that. It shows initiative. Trevor, Brianna said, stepping back from him, you cannot use government documents for a marketing pitch. Are you insane? It is not a government document, Gordon interjected, defending his son. There is no stamp on it. It is just a drawing. Celeste drew those circles herself. I recognize her handwriting. If she drew it, it is hers. And if it is hers, she can share it with her brother. It is not mine to share, I said, and it is certainly not yours to take. We are sharing it, Gordon yelled. That is what families do. We help each other. Trevor needs a leg up with this client. If you have a map that helps him, you should be offering it, not hiding it in a locked bag like a miser. I looked at my father. I looked at the man who taught me to ride a bike, who paid for my braces, and I realized he was a stranger. He was a man whose ego was so fragile, whose need for control was so absolute, that he would dismantle national security just to prove that he had access to his daughter's life. "It is too late," I said. I triggered the alarm. "What alarm?" Marilyn asked, pausing with her coffee cup halfway to her mouth. "The breach protocol," I said. "I notified my agency that this location is compromised and that classified data has been uploaded to an unsecured civilian network." For a second, there was silence. Then Trevor laughed again, a nervous, incredulous laugh. "You did what? You called the police on us?" "Not the police," I said. "Federal risk and continuity, and they do not come with a notepad to take a statement. They come with a containment team." "You are lying," Trevor sneered. "You are just trying to scare us. You are trying to make us feel bad for looking at your precious papers." "Look at your phone, Trevor," I said. "Look at the signal." He frowned and looked at the top corner of his screen. "It is weird," he muttered. "I just lost 5G. It went to SOS only." "That is the local jammer," I said. "They cut the cellular signal to the area to prevent further data exfiltration. They will be here in less than 4 minutes. Gordon's face went from red to a patchy gray. You blocked our phones? You called the government on your own family? Over a piece of paper?" "It is not paper. Dad, it is people's lives," I finally shouted, the composure cracking. "That map shows how to blow up a chemical storage facility, and Trevor just uploaded it to the cloud." "I did not upload it to the public," Trevor yelled back, seemingly more concerned with his tech literacy than the treason. "I sent it to a private folder, and I shared it with one person. One person. Celeste." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You shared it?" I whispered. "You sent a link?" "Yes." Trevor threw his hands up. "I sent a view-only link. It expires in 24 hours. See, I am security conscious too." "Who?" I asked. "Who did you send it to?" "Just the client," Trevor said. "Well, the intermediary, the guy who is helping me land the account." "Who?" I repeated. "Darren," Trevor said, as if the name explained everything. "Darren Vane. He is a consultant. He told me if I could show him, I understood the layout of the facility, he could fast-track the contract." The room started to spin. Darren Vane. The name was not familiar to me, but the pattern was. The consultant. The request for layout. The promise of a contract. It was a classic elicitation technique. "Trevor," I said, stepping closer to him, "did Darren specifically ask for the layout, or did you just offer it?" "He asked," Trevor said, looking confused by my intensity. "He said he was worried about structural integrity. He said if I could find any detailed schematics, especially of the basement and the loading zones, it would really help him sell my pitch to the owners." "He asked for the basement," I repeated. "Yeah. He said he needed to know the load-bearing capacity or something." Then Trevor smiled, a weak, arrogant little smile that was trying to cover up the sudden fear creeping into his eyes. "Honestly, Celeste, you should be thanking me. Darren is a big deal. He knows people. He told me he has been trying to get a look at the inside of that place for weeks, but the security was too tight. He said all he needed was a corner of the blueprint to close the deal, and I gave him the whole thing." The silence that followed was absolute. "He needed a corner," I said. "Yeah, just to verify the dimensions." I stared at my brother. I looked at the phone in his hand. "Trevor," I said, "Darren didn't want to buy the building. He wanted to breach it." "What?" "He couldn't get in," I said, the pieces locking together in my mind with terrifying clarity. "The security was too tight, so he found the weak link. He didn't hack the building. He hacked the marketing guy." Trevor blinked. "You are crazy. Darren is a businessman. We will see, I said. Outside, the morning silence was shattered. It started as a low rumble, then grew into the distinct, heavy roar of reinforced engines. Tires screeched on the pavement. Not one car, 3, doors slammed. Heavy, metallic thuds. Police! A voice amplified by a megaphone cut through the suburban air like a knife. Federal agents! Occupants of 42 Briarwood Lane, stay away from the windows. Exit the front door with your hands visible. Marilyn dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, splashing hot brown liquid over the classified timeline of cyber attacks. Brianna covered her mouth. Gordon looked at the window, then at me. Celeste, what did you do? I did not look at him. I looked at Trevor. I did my job, I said. Now pray that Darren is just a businessman. The silence that followed my declaration was not the silence of peace. It was the vacuum before an implosion. For 3 seconds, the only sound in the room was the harsh, ragged breathing of my father and the drip, drip, drip of coffee from the table onto the carpet. Then, the world outside exploded. It began with the screech of tires, a sound so violent it seemed to tear the air apart. It was not the polite crunch of a sedan pulling into a driveway. It was the aggressive, heavy skid of reinforced SUVs braking hard on asphalt. 1, 2, 3, 4 vehicles. I heard the doors open. Thud, 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 heavy, metallic slams that sounded like hammers striking an anvil. What is that? Marilyn whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for a napkin to wipe the spilled coffee. Who is that? Stay where you are, I ordered, my voice cutting through her panic. Do not move toward the window. Do not touch the phone. This is ridiculous, Gordon growled, taking a step toward the front door. I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. You do not come onto private property like... The front door did not wait for him to open it. There was a thunderous crash as the battering ram hit the deadbolt. The wood splintered with a sickening crack, and the door flew open, rebounding off the wall with enough force to knock a framed picture of the family dog to the floor. Federal agents, hands, let me see your hands. They poured into the foyer like a black tide, men and women in heavy tactical gear, helmets, and ballistic vests emblazoned with HSY and FRCB response. The air was instantly filled with the smell of ozone and tension. Contact front. 4 subjects secured in the living room. Hands on your heads. Now. Do it now. Red laser sights swept across the floral wallpaper, dancing over the china cabinet and settling on my father's chest. Don't shoot, Brianna screamed. Dropping her mug, it shattered, ceramic shards exploding across the hardwood. She fell to her knees, hands clamped over her head. Gordon stood frozen, his mouth open in shock. A tactical officer rushed him, spinning him around and slamming him against the wall. Hey, that is my husband! Marilyn shrieked, lunging forward. 2 agents intercepted her, not with violence, but with the unyielding solidity of a brick wall. They guided her firmly to the sofa. Sit down. Ma'am, hands where we can see them. Clear left. Kitchen clear. Clear right. Stairs clear. The house was being dissected. The domestic sanctuary of Briarwood Lane was gone. In its place was a hot zone. I stood perfectly still in the center of the room, my hands raised to shoulder height, palms open. I did not scream. I did not resist. I locked eyes with the lead agent as he entered. He was a tall man with graying stubble and eyes that looked like they had seen every variety of human stupidity. Agent in place, I said, my voice steady. Celeste Sutherland, FRCB analyst, ID number 4992 Alpha. I initiated the distress signal. The lead agent, his vest read Vance, nodded once. He did not smile. He did not offer a handshake. Secure the perimeter, Vance barked to his team. I want a Faraday bag on all electronics immediately. Bag and tag every loose paper in this room. Nobody leaves. Nobody talks to each other. An agent moved toward Trevor. Trevor was still holding his phone, staring at the screen as if it were an alien artifact. He looked small. The arrogance of the marketing pitch was gone. replaced by the pale, sweaty terror of a child who realizes the game has gone too far. "Phone," the agent commanded. It is just my personal," Trevor stammered. The agent snatched the device from his hand and dropped it into a silver signal-blocking pouch. He zipped it shut. Trevor flinched as if he had been slapped. "That is my life in there," Trevor whispered. "It is evidence now," the agent replied. Within 5 minutes, the transformation was complete. My parents were separated. Mom was crying softly on the sofa. A female agent standing guard over her. Dad was seated at the dining table, his face buried in his hands. Brianna was in the kitchen, staring at the wall. Trevor was slumped in the armchair, and I was standing by the fireplace, watching them bag the timeline, the map, and the sticky note. "You called them," Marilyn sobbed, her voice breaking the tactical silence. She looked at me with eyes full of betrayal. "You called people to arrest us, your own parents. I baked you a cake. Celeste, I baked you a cake at 3 a.m. "Marilyn, stop," Gordon groaned. "Don't give them anything." He looked up at me, his eyes burning with humiliation. "You disgraced us. You humiliated this family. Neighbors are watching. People will talk. How could you do this to your brother?" "I did not do it to him," I said quietly. "He did it to himself." "Agent Sutherland." Vance stepped in front of me, blocking my view of my parents. "Walk with me." He steered me toward the foyer, away from the weeping and the accusations. He pulled out a digital recorder. "Give me the sitrep," he said. "Fast and dirty. I brought a classified Tier 4 threat assessment home," I said, keeping my report clinical. I secured it in a biometric briefcase in a locked room. At approximately 0300 hours, I was distracted by a family member. I failed to spin the combination dials upon securing the case. I left the house at 0730 for physical training. Upon return at 0815, I found the case compromised. Vance stared at me. "You forgot the dials?" "Affirmative," I said. The shame burned in my gut, but I did not let it color my voice. My negligence allowed access, but the situation escalated. When I confronted the family, I discovered the documents had been removed, reorganized, and photographed. "Photographed?" Vance asked, his brow furrowing. "Scanned," I corrected. "High-resolution PDF via a mobile application on Trevor Sutherland's device and uploaded to a cloud server." Vance swore softly. He turned to the tech specialist who was setting up a laptop on the hallway table. "Harper, I need a dump on that phone we just bagged. Priority on recent uploads and outbound data streams. Kill the link if it is still live." "Working on it," Harper said, typing furiously. "It gets worse," I said. Vance looked back at me. "How does it get worse than a cloud upload of a chemical facility blueprint?" "My brother admitted to sharing the link," I said. "He sent it to a third party." Vance went very still. "Who?" "A business contact. Someone helping him with a marketing contract. Name is Darren Vane." Vance didn't react to the name initially. He just turned back to Harper. "Run the name. Darren Vane. Cross-reference with the watch lists." I watched as Harper worked. The seconds ticked by like hours. In the living room, I could hear Mom trying to bargain with the agent guarding her. "He is a good boy. He did not mean any harm. He is just ambitious." "Got it," Harper said. His voice was tight. "Trevor's phone log confirms it. A view-only link to the document, textile_depot_scan ... was sent via encrypted messaging app to a contact listed as Darren, Consultant." "Has it been opened?" Vance asked. "Yes," Harper said. "Opened 3 minutes after it was sent. View duration, 12 minutes. IP address traces to a bouncing signal. Currently exiting through a node in Jersey City." "Jersey City," Vance repeated. "That is near the port." "Boss," Harper said, his fingers flying across the keys. "I ran the name Vane. You are going to want to see this." Vance walked over to the laptop. I followed him. On the screen, A profile popped up. It was a surveillance file. The photo showed a man in a sharp suit, getting out of a black car. He looked like any other corporate shark, but the text next to his face was red. Subject: Vane, Darren, status, active surveillance, affiliation, East Coast Syndicate / logistics facilitation. He is not a marketing consultant, Vance said, reading the screen. He is a broker. He buys access codes and security schedules for smuggling rings. Trevor said Vane promised him a contract, I said, feeling a cold knot in my stomach. He said Vane specifically asked for the basement schematics to check load-bearing capacity. Vance looked at me. Basement schematics? For the textile depot? Yes. That depot sits directly on top of the municipal gas main. Vance said, if you access the basement, you bypass the external pressure monitors. You could overpressurize the line and blow a hole in the city center without ever setting a bomb. I leaned against the wall. Trevor thought he was selling a drone video. He was handing over the keys to a catastrophe. Vance turned around and walked back into the living room. The energy in the room shifted. It was no longer a raid. It was an interrogation. He stopped in front of Trevor. He didn't yell. He just looked down at him with the cold, predatory focus of a hawk spotting a mouse. Trevor Sutherland, Vance said. Trevor looked up. He was shaking. I want a lawyer. You have to give me a lawyer. You will get a lawyer, Vance said. But right now, I want to know about your friend. Tell me about Darren. Trevor swallowed hard. I barely know him. We met at a mixer. He is just a guy. Just a guy, Vance repeated. He looked at Marilyn. And you, ma'am? You said earlier he was a business friend. Do you know him? Marilyn wiped her eyes. She sat up straighter, her defensive instincts kicking in. I have never met him, but Trevor talks about him. He is a professional. He is helping my son build his career. Unlike some people who try to tear it down, she shot a venomous look at me. He is just a business associate. You are making a mountain out of a molehill. A business associate, Vance said flatly. So, you would say the family was aware of this relationship? You supported it? Of course we supported it, Gordon shouted from the table. We support our children. Trevor is a businessman. He networks. That is what successful people do. Did you know he was asking for blueprints of federal facilities? Vance asked. He asked for a floor plan, Gordon argued. For a pitch. It is not a crime to be prepared. It is when the person asking is a known facilitator for domestic terrorism, Vance said. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. Gordon's mouth snapped shut. Marilyn stopped crying mid-sob. Trevor stopped shaking and went rigid. What? Trevor whispered. That is not true. He wears tailored suits. He drives a Porsche. Terrorists drive cars too. Son, Vance said. And thanks to you, he now has the layout of a critical infrastructure node. And thanks to your parents, he gestured to the scattered papers on the table. He also has the timeline of our cyber defense response, because you scanned that too, didn't you? Trevor looked down at his lap. I just clicked scan all. I thought it would look professional to have the whole package. Vance turned away from them. He walked over to where I was standing. He looked tired. We have to move, Vance said to me, his voice low. We have to lock down the depot. We have to assume Vane is moving on the intel immediately. If he knows we are onto the breach, he will accelerate his timeline. What about them? I asked, nodding toward my family. Vance looked at them. He looked at my mother, who was now staring at her hands as if they were covered in blood. He looked at my father, who had shrunk into himself, looking 20 years older. He looked at Trevor, who was weeping silently. We take them in, Vance said. Obstruction of justice, mishandling of classified material, violation of the Espionage Act. They are idiots, I said, not spies. It does not matter, Vance said. Ignorance is not a defense when the data is gone. He leaned in closer to me. And Agent Sutherland, you need to prepare yourself. For what? For the narrative, Vance said. Look at the logs Harper pulled. The upload from Trevor's phone? It started at 8:05 in the morning, but there is a metadata tag on the original file access. What do you mean? The file on your laptop, Vance said. The one they scanned. The system log shows it was opened at 3:45 in the morning, and then again at 4:15. I was asleep, I said. I went to bed at 3:30. Exactly, Vance said. Someone in this house didn't just stumble upon your bag this morning. They were in your room last night. They accessed the laptop. They read the files, and then they waited until morning to scan them. I looked at my family. This isn't just family curiosity anymore, Vance said, his voice dropping to a whisper that chilled my blood. This isn't accidental. There are signs of premeditation. There are signs of collusion. He signaled to his team. Get them up. Cuff them. Transport to the holding facility. Separate vehicles. As the agents moved in, pulling my parents to their feet and clicking handcuffs onto their wrists, I stood there and watched. I watched the people who raised me be led away like criminals. Marilyn screamed as the metal cuffs locked. Celeste, tell them we are good people. I said nothing, because I was looking at the timeline in my head. 3:45 in the morning, I had been eating pound cake with Mom at 3:30. She had kept me downstairs. She had shown me photo albums. She had asked me about my loneliness, and while she was distracting me, someone else had been upstairs. It wasn't just Trevor being an idiot. It was a strategy. My family hadn't just crossed a boundary. They had run an operation on me. The transition from daughter to subject of inquiry happens faster than you might expect. It does not take days. It takes the exact amount of time required for a biometric badge to flash red instead of green. Monday morning did not begin with a coffee run or a team huddle. It began in a windowless room on the sub-basement level of the Federal Risk and Continuity Bureau headquarters. I was stripped of my personal devices, my agency laptop, and my freedom of movement. I was placed on administrative hold, which is a polite bureaucratic euphemism for being treated like a radioactive isotope, contained, monitored, and kept far away from anything vital. My office was now a 6x8 interrogation room with a steel table and a two-way mirror. I was not under arrest. Technically, I was the whistleblower. I was the one who had pulled the alarm. But in the eyes of the agency, a compromised agent is indistinguishable from a traitor until the paperwork says otherwise. State your name for the record. Celeste Sutherland. State the nature of your relationship with the suspects. They are my parents, and my brother, and your sister? Brianna Sutherland. She was present, but to my knowledge, she did not handle the device. I repeated this sequence for 8 hours. Different agents, different angles, the same questions. They wanted to find the crack in my armor. They wanted to see if I had been complicit. If this was a family enterprise, and I had just gotten cold feet at the last minute, while I was stuck in that air-conditioned purgatory, the world outside was burning down. They say bad news travels fast, but scandal travels at the speed of light. My family did not go quietly into the night. They went kicking, screaming, and litigating. By Tuesday afternoon, the Sutherland incident had not hit the national news yet. National security blackouts are effective like that. But it had detonated in Briarwood. I was allowed one monitored phone call to manage my affairs. I called my landlord to explain why I wouldn't be home. But when I turned my phone on for that brief window, the notifications that flooded in were not from my landlord. They were from my aunts, my cousins, my high school friends. "How could you do this to your own mother?" read a text from Aunt Linda. "She is 60 years old. Celeste, you had her put in handcuffs? For a piece of paper?" "Traitor," read another from a cousin I had not spoken to in 5 years. The family group chat, Sutherland Squad, which had been active daily with memes and dinner plans, was gone, deleted, disbanded. I had been digitally excised from the clan. I found out later, through the sterile updates provided by my appointed legal counsel, that Marilyn was controlling the narrative. She was out on bail within 24 hours. The charges pending but not yet solidified into an indictment, and she went straight to the court of public opinion. She stood in the grocery store aisle, weeping into a handkerchief, telling anyone who would listen that her daughter had suffered a nervous breakdown. "Celeste has been under so much pressure," she told Mrs. Gable, the town gossip. "She just snapped. We were looking at a map for Trevor's work, just a harmless little map, and she started screaming about terrorists and called a SWAT team. She had her own father thrown on the ground. It is mental illness. Truly. We are just praying for her." She painted me as the hysterical, paranoid spinster who turned on her loving family because she couldn't handle the stress of her secret job. It was a brilliant defense. It played on every suburban prejudice. It made them the victims of government overreach and a daughter's instability. But while Marilyn was spinning stories, Trevor was facing the hard math of reality. Trevor's marketing agency, Apex Creative, effectively ceased to exist by Wednesday morning. When the Homeland Security team seized his electronics, they didn't just take his phone, they seized his servers. They seized his client lists. They seized his financial records to look for payments from Darren Vane. In the corporate world, silence is deadly. When Trevor didn't show up for the pitch at the textile depot because he was in a holding cell answering questions about domestic terrorism, the client didn't just walk away. They ran. Word got out that Apex Creative was under federal investigation, not for tax fraud, which is forgivable in some circles, but for data trafficking. I heard from my lawyer that Trevor's landlord locked him out of his office for breach of contract regarding criminal activity on the premises. His 2 employees quit via text message. His business friends, the guys he drank scotch with and bragged to about his connections, blocked his number. It turns out that when the FBI starts asking questions about you, your network dissolves like cotton candy in the rain. Trevor lost everything he had built in 5 years in the span of 48 hours. He was released on a massive bond, confined to house arrest at my parents' place, stripped of his internet access, his reputation in tatters, and he blamed me. They all did. On Thursday, I received a summons to the deputy director's office. Livia Hart was a legend in the FRCB. She was a woman who did not raise her voice because she did not have to. When I walked into her office, she was standing by the window, looking out at the gray skyline of D.C. "Sit down, Sutherland," she said, not turning around. I sat. My hands were folded in my lap. I felt small. She turned and placed a single sheet of paper on her desk. It was a formal letter of commendation. "The review board has cleared you," she said. Her voice was dry. "You followed the Class 4 protocol to the letter. You identified the breach. You secured the perimeter. You initiated the signal. Technically, you are a hero. You stopped a potential kinetic event at a major logistics hub." "Thank you, Director," I said. "Do not thank me yet," she said. She sat down and leaned forward. "Because while you did everything right regarding the reaction, the prevention was a catastrophic failure. You brought a device into a non-secure environment. You allowed civilians access. That is a black mark that does not wash off." "I understand," I said. "I accept the consequences." "The consequences," she said, tapping the desk, "are that you are being reassigned. You are off the field. You are off the active analysis desk. You will be working in archives until the trial is over. If there is a trial." "If?" I asked. "Your family's lawyer is good. He is arguing entrapment. He is arguing that the documents were not clearly marked. He is arguing that you invited them to look." "That is a lie," I said. "Courts do not care about truth. Sutherland, they care about what can be proven, and right now, it looks like a messy domestic dispute that got out of hand. Your mother's nervous breakdown narrative is gaining traction." She slid a tablet across the desk. "However," she said, her eyes hardening, "there is something the defense attorney does not know yet. Something our forensics team found this morning." I looked at the tablet. It displayed a data visualization of the access logs for my agency account. "We did a deep dive on Trevor's cloud uploads," Hart said. and we cross-referenced them with the metadata on your hard drive. We wanted to see exactly when the files were accessed on Sunday morning. I know, I said. 3:45 a.m. and 4:15 a.m. Yes, Hart said. Those were the times on Sunday, but look at the previous entries. I looked at the list. My breath caught in my throat. There were entries from 2 weeks ago. January 14th, January 5th, December 24th. What is this? I whispered. These are file access logs, Hart said. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, someone used your credentials to access the FRCB server. They downloaded a structural report on the Ohio River Bridge. I was at my parents' house for Christmas Eve, I said, my mind racing. But I didn't work. I left my laptop in the guest room. I was downstairs making eggnog. And on January 5th? Hart asked. Where were you? I stopped by for my dad's birthday. I stayed for dinner. And while you were eating birthday cake, Hart said, someone accessed the personnel roster for the Regional Transport Authority. I stared at the dates. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a one-time lapse of judgment because I forgot to spin a dial. This was a pattern. They have been doing this for months, I said, the realization making me feel physically ill. Every time I came home, every time I visited, they waited for me to let my guard down. It appears so, Hart said. Trevor's phone had a recurring reminder set for every time you visited. Check bag. That is what the calendar entry said. I closed my eyes. I thought about the jokes. Chab basic work files. My little secret agent. They weren't jokes. They were probes. They were testing the waters. I thought about the times I had found my things slightly moved and dismissed it as Mom, tidying up. I thought about the questions Dad would ask. So, are you still working on that bridge project? Is that concrete holding up? I thought he was just trying to make conversation. I thought he was trying to connect with me. He wasn't connecting. He was mining. The files they took on Christmas, I asked. Where did they go? To Darren Vane, Hart said. We recovered deleted chats. Vane paid Trevor $4,000 for the bridge report. He paid him $6,000 for the personnel roster. $10,000. My family sold national security for $10,000. Trevor was in debt, I said. Gambling. I knew that. I didn't know it was this bad. It is not just Trevor, Hart said. The chats show your father asking about the payments. Did the consultant come through? That is a direct quote from Gordon Sutherland. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I brushed it away angrily. They sold me, I said. They didn't just sell the files. They sold me. They used me as a mule. Yes, Hart said. You were the Trojan horse. They invited you to dinner. They played the loving family. And while you were eating their food, they were picking your pockets for Darren Vane. The door opened. A man in a suit walked in. I recognized him. It was Agent Vargas, the man who had led the raid. He looked at me with a strange expression. It wasn't pity. It was a grim sort of respect mixed with wariness. We finished the sweep of the house, Vance said to Hart, then turned to me. We found something in the basement, hidden behind the drywall in your father's workshop. What? I asked. A signal repeater, Vance said. High-end military grade. It was installed to boost the Wi-Fi signal specifically in the guest bedroom, your old room. I stared at him. Why? So the upload speeds would be faster, Vance said, and so they could mirror your screen without you noticing the lag. He placed a photo on the desk. It showed the device, wired clumsily but effectively into the house's junction box. Celeste, Vance said, his voice dropping to that low, terrifying register he had used in the living room. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. They didn't just see an open bag and get curious. He leaned in, his eyes locking onto mine. Your father drilled a hole in the wall behind your desk 3 months ago. He installed a pinhole camera. The world tilted. A camera. In my bedroom. They watched you type your password, Vance said. They didn't need you to forget the lock. They had your password. Celeste. They have had it since Thanksgiving. But The biometric scan, I stammered. The fingerprint. Trevor bought a lifting kit online, Vance said. He lifted your print from a wine glass at Christmas. He made a synthetic mold. We found it in his desk drawer. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was the paranoid one. I thought I was the one with the secrets, the one who built walls, the one who didn't trust enough. But I was the only innocent person in that house. I was a sheep who walked into a den of wolves every Sunday, bringing them fresh meat, thinking I was just coming home for dinner. They knew, I whispered. The whole time, when they were mocking me for being secretive, they were laughing because they already knew everything. They were gaslighting you, Hart said. They made you feel crazy for having boundaries so you would doubt yourself when those boundaries were crossed. Vance picked up the file. The district attorney is upgrading the charges, he said. This isn't negligence anymore. This is espionage, conspiracy to commit treason. We are talking 20 years to life, for all of them. He looked at me. But we need you to testify, not just about Sunday. We need you to walk the jury through every visit, every dinner, every conversation where they pumped you for information. They are my family, I said. The words tasted like ash. No, Vance said. They are your handlers. You just didn't know you were an asset. He paused, then delivered the final blow. We found a text from your mother to Trevor, dated 2 days ago, before the raid. Read it, I said. Vance read from the file. She wrote, Make sure you get the folder with the red stripe this weekend. Celeste is soft right now. She is tired. She will make a mistake if we push her enough. Just keep asking her about her love life. She shuts down and forgets to check the bag. I sat there in the silence of the deputy director's office. Marilyn, my mother, the woman who baked pound cake, the woman who worried about my loneliness. She didn't care about my loneliness. She used it. She weaponized my isolation to steal state secrets. I will testify, I said. I will tell you everything. The forensic accountant placed the file on the metal table between us. It was not a thin file. It was a binder, 3 inches thick, filled with the financial autopsy of the Sutherland family legacy. You should look at page 4, the accountant said. He was a small man with glasses who looked at numbers with more empathy than he looked at people. It speaks to motive. I opened the binder. I expected to see poor budgeting. I expected to see maybe a few late payments. What I saw was a catastrophe disguised as a middle-class life. My parents were not just broke. They were underwater, drowning in a sea of red ink that went back 7 years. The house in Briarwood, the symbol of their stability, had been refinanced 3 times. There was a home equity line of credit that had been maxed out to the limit of $85,000. There were credit cards I did not know existed, opened in my father's name, my mother's name, and even one in a variation of Trevor's name, all hovering at their credit limits with interest rates that should have been illegal. They were insolvent, the accountant said quietly. Technically, they have been bankrupt since 2022. They have just been juggling the debt, moving it from one card to another, taking out payday loans to cover the mortgage interest. I turned the page. I saw a line item for medical expenses. It was a staggering sum. Your father's hip surgery, the accountant noted. Insurance denied the claim because of a filing error. They owe the hospital $42,000. And the renovation project? The sunroom your mother wanted? They never finished it, I said, remembering the tarp that had covered the back deck for 6 months. They paid a contractor $30,000 up front, he said. The contractor vanished. They never sued because they could not afford the legal fees. I sat back in the chair, the fluorescent lights humming above me. It all made sense. The tension at dinner, Dad's obsession with success, Mom's desperate need for everything to look perfect. They were not just living paycheck to paycheck, they were living on the edge of a cliff, and the ground was crumbling. And then, the accountant said, flipping to the back of the binder, we see the deposits. He pointed to a series of transfers into a hidden PayPal account linked to my father's email address, but registered under a fake name. November 15th, $2,000, December 26th, $4,000. January 6th, $6,000. These coincide with your visits, he said, and they coincide with data breaches on your device. I looked at the numbers. They had sold my career, my safety, and national security for $12,000. That was the price of my betrayal. It was not millions. It was enough to pay off a credit card and fix the transmission on Dad's truck. I felt a nausea so profound I had to close my eyes. It is one thing to be betrayed for an ideology. It is another to be betrayed for a master bathroom renovation. Later that afternoon, I was permitted to see Trevor. He was being held in a separate wing, away from our parents. When I walked in, he looked terrible. The confident marketing executive was gone. In his place was a scared boy in an orange jumpsuit who had not shaved in 3 days. He looked up at me, and his first instinct was still defensiveness. "Finally," he said, his voice cracking. "Did you bring a lawyer? The public defender they gave me is a joke. He keeps talking about plea deals. I am not taking a plea. Celeste, I did not do anything wrong." "Trevor," I said, sitting down across from him, "you sold classified schematics to an arms dealer." "He is not an arms dealer," Trevor shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The guard in the corner took a step forward, but I waved him off. "Darren is a consultant. He told me he works with logistics companies to optimize routes. He said he needed the data to show his clients how to improve efficiency. And you believed him?" "He promised me the contract," Trevor said, his eyes desperate. "Do you know how hard it is out there right now? My agency was tanking. Celeste, I lost 3 clients in October. Darren said if I could get him inside information on shipping protocols, he would guarantee me a retainer of $5,000 a month. $5,000? That would have saved me." "So you traded me for a retainer," I said cold. "I did not think it was a big deal," Trevor insisted. "I thought it was just paperwork, bureaucracy. I figured you guys make everything look secret just to justify your budget. I didn't think anyone would actually get hurt." "You did not think," I corrected. "You just wanted the money." "Dad told me it was okay," Trevor blurted out. The room went silent. "What did you say?" I asked. Trevor slumped in his chair. "Dad, he told me to do it, after Thanksgiving. When I told him I was going to lose the business, he said you had plenty of files. He said you were hoarding success while we were struggling. He said, 'See if you can get something from her bag next time. She owes us.'" I felt the blood drain from my face. "Dad said that?" "He said we put you through college," Trevor muttered. "He said it was time for a return on investment." I stood up. I could not look at him any more. I walked to the door. "Celeste, wait," Trevor called out. "You have to explain to them. Tell them I was just following orders. Tell them I did not know." I walked out. In the hallway, I ran into Brianna. She was not in cuffs. She was sitting on a bench, holding a cup of lukewarm coffee, looking at the floor. She had been granted conditional immunity in exchange for full cooperation, mostly because she had not physically touched the files, though she had known about the plan. She looked up when she saw me. Her eyes were red. "I have something for you," she said. Her voice was hollow. She reached into her purse, which had been returned to her after the forensic sweep, and pulled out a printed screenshot. "The agents missed this one," she said. "Or maybe they have it and just didn't show you. But I took this screenshot 2 weeks ago, before I got too scared to say anything." She handed me the paper. It was a capture from a group chat named Operation Rainy Day. The participants were Dad, Mom, and Trevor. I read the text exchange. It was dated Sunday morning, 7:15 a.m., just minutes before I went for my run. Gordon. "She is putting on her shoes. Get the phone ready. Marilyn. I will keep her downstairs if she comes back too early. Just make sure you get the red folder. That is the one she was working on all night." Gordon. "Trevor. Do not mess this up. Wait for her to run. Then scan fast. We need that transfer by Monday or the bank takes the car." Trevor. "I got it. Dad, chill. Gordon. And wiped the lens on the camera. The last batch was blurry and Darren complained. I stared at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. Wait for her to run. It was not a crime of passion. It was not a desperate, spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a hunting strategy. My father, the man who used to carry me on his shoulders, had sat in his armchair, drinking coffee, tracking my movements like I was a prey animal, waiting for the moment I left the safety of the herd so they could strip the meat from my bones. He knew, I whispered. He knew exactly what he was doing. He planned it, Brianna said softly. He bought the scanner app. He set up the PayPal. He told Mom which questions to ask you to distract you. He was not the bumbling old man. Celeste, he was the CEO of the whole thing. I crumbled the paper in my hand. The anger that had been burning inside me turned into something colder, something harder. It turned into resolve. The next morning, I sat in a closed hearing room. The walls were soundproofed. The air was sterile. Across the table sat 3 federal prosecutors and my agency's legal counsel. Ms. Sutherland, the lead prosecutor said, we are preparing the indictment, but we need to be clear. If you testify, the defense will come for you. They will say you were negligent. They will say you tacitly allowed this to happen. They will try to destroy your credibility to save your parents. I know, I said. And the prosecutor continued, looking at me over his glasses. If you hesitate, if you try to soften the blow for them on the stand, the jury might see that as collusion. If you protect them, you implicate yourself. You could lose your clearance. You could face charges of aiding and abetting. I looked at my hands. I thought about the debt. I thought about the return on investment. I thought about the text message. Wait for her to run. I will not hesitate, I said. Are you sure? The lawyer asked. It is your mother and father. No, I said. My mother and father died a long time ago. The people in those holding cells are strangers who stole their faces. Later that day, I was forced to sit in a room with Trevor and his lawyer for a deposition. It was a requirement of the pre-trial discovery. Trevor was more agitated now. The reality of the prison time was setting in. Why didn't you just tell us? He demanded. Breaking protocol. His lawyer tried to hush him, but Trevor leaned over the table. If it was so dangerous, why didn't you just say, hey, this is a bomb. If you had explained it, I never would have touched it. I looked at him. He still wanted to make it my fault. He still wanted to believe that his crime was a result of my lack of communication. I told you no, I said. But you didn't say why, Trevor argued. You just said, it's classified. That means nothing. If you had sat us down and said, this is a chemical plant and people will die, do you think we are monsters? We would have stopped. I doubt that, I said. Because you didn't care what it was. You only cared what it was worth. I am your brother, he shouted. You owed me an explanation. You cannot just lock things away in our own house and expect us not to look. I leaned forward. The glass partition reflected my face. I looked older than 34. Trevor, I said, my voice steady and quiet. That is the problem. You think you are entitled to my mind. You think that because we share blood, you have a right to every thought in my head, but you don't. I just wanted to understand, he pleaded. You do not need to understand, I said. You do not need to know why the files are dangerous. You do not need to know the physics of a gas explosion. You do not need to know the intricacies of federal law. When I said no, that should have been the end of the conversation. You do not need to understand everything. You just need to respect the word no. He stared at me, his mouth open, unable to process a world where his curiosity did not override my autonomy. You broke the lock, I said. You don't get to blame the lock for not being strong enough. The door to the deposition room opened. It was Agent Vargas. He looked urgent. He signaled for the recording to stop. He walked over to the table and looked directly at Trevor, then at me. We have a development, Vance said. What? Trevor asked, looking hopeful. Did they find Darren? Did he clear me? Vance looked at Trevor with a mixture of pity and disgust. We found Darren Vane, Vance said. Or rather, we found his digital footprint. He is currently in a non-extradition country, but before he left, he scrubbed his servers. Okay, Trevor said. So, Vance continued. He didn't just delete his files. He planted a trail. He rerouted the IP addresses of the initial hacks. He modified the logs. Modified them how? I asked. He made it look like the request for the blueprints didn't come from him, Vance said. He made it look like it came from you, Trevor. He set it up to look like you were the one selling the data to the highest bidder on the dark web, and he was just an unwitting intermediary. Trevor went pale. But I have the texts. I have the chats. Those were on an encrypted app, Vance said. Vane wiped the keys. The chats are gone. All that is left is the server log that says Trevor Sutherland initiated the transfer. Vance paused, letting the weight of the room settle on my brother's shoulders. He is not clearing you, son. He is framing you. He is making you the mastermind so he can disappear with the intel. And right now, according to the digital evidence, you are not just a useful idiot. You are the architect of a domestic terror plot. Revenge, in the movies, is usually a loud affair. It involves shouting matches in the rain, slapped faces, or a dramatic monologue delivered while holding a smoking gun. But in my world, the world of risk analysis and federal procedure, revenge is quiet. It is boring. It is the sound of a pen scratching across an affidavit. It is the soft click of a record button. It is the absolute, terrifying precision of the truth weaponized against those who thought they could hide it. I did not want to destroy my brother. I wanted to dismantle the lie he was living in, and to do that, I had to stop being his sister and start being his handler. The room was cold. It was a tactical operations center set up in a nondescript office building 3 blocks from the courthouse. Agent Vargas stood by the audio console, wearing headphones. 2 technicians monitored a waveform display that looked like a jagged green mountain range on the screen. Trevor sat at a small table in the center of the room. He looked like a man who had not slept in a week. His hands were shaking so badly that the paper cup of water in front of him created miniature ripples. We are ready, Vance said. His voice was calm, devoid of judgment. I sat across from Trevor. I did not hold his hand. I did not offer him false comfort. You have 2 choices, I said. Option A is you stay silent. You protect Darren. You go to prison for 20 years as the primary architect of a terror plot. Option B is you make this call. You get him to admit that he knew what he was buying. You become a witness instead of a target. Trevor looked at the phone on the table. It was a burner, clean and untraceable, programmed with Darren's number. The one number Trevor had managed to memorize because he thought it was his ticket to the big leagues. What if he knows? Trevor whispered. He is smart, Celeste. He deleted the servers. He framed me. He is smart, I agreed. But he is arrogant. He thinks you are a loose end. He thinks you are stupid. Use that. Be the panicked, incompetent kid he thinks you are. Make him feel superior. When people feel superior, they get sloppy. Trevor swallowed hard. He looked at the script we had prepared. It was simple. He wasn't supposed to ask about the plot. He was just supposed to beg. Dial it, Vance ordered. Trevor punched in the numbers. He put the phone on speaker. The line rang. Once, twice, 3 times. My heart hammered against my ribs. But my face remained a mask of professional indifference. If Darren didn't pick up, we were dead in the water. Click. Who is this? The voice was smooth, baritone, and irritated. Darren, it is me, Trevor. Silence. The air in the room grew heavy. Trevor, Darren said. The warmth was gone from his voice. I thought I told you never to use this line. I know. I am sorry, Trevor stammered, his panic genuine. But I am freaking out. Man, the feds raided my parents' house. They took my laptop. They took my phone. Calm down, Darren said. Did they arrest you? No, not yet. I am at a motel. Trevor lied, reading from the script. But they are asking about the files, the textile depot stuff. Darren, you have to help me. You have to delete the link I sent you. If they find that link, I am finished. There was a pause. I watched the green waveform on the monitor spike as Darren laughed. It was a dry, cruel sound. The link is gone. Trevor, I scrubbed it hours ago. I am a professional, unlike some people. Okay, good, Trevor breathed, wiping sweat from his forehead. So it is over? You just needed the floor plan for the pitch, right? If I tell them it was just for a marketing pitch, it will be okay? This was the trap, the pivot. Trevor, Darren sighed, sounding bored. Do not be naive. You think I paid you 10 grand for a marketing pitch? I do not know, Trevor said. You said you needed to check the load-bearing walls. I needed to know where the pressure valves were located in the basement, Darren corrected him. And thanks to your sister's excellent notes, I found them. I felt a chill run down my spine. He admitted it. He admitted seeing my notes. But why? Trevor asked, his voice trembling. Why do you need the valves? Stop asking questions, Darren snapped. Listen to me. Go home. Keep your mouth shut. If the feds ask, you found those plans online. You never met me. You never sent me anything. If you mention my name, the link won't be the only thing that gets deleted. But what about the deal? Trevor whined. You promised me a contract. The deal is done, Darren said. The shipment is moving tonight. The inspection schedule you sent me for the rail yard was perfect. We are bypassing the checkpoint at 2 a.m. Once the cargo is through, maybe I will throw you a bone. Until then, you do not exist. Click, the line went dead. For a second, nobody moved. The silence in the room was absolute. Then, Vance ripped the headphones off. Did you get that? He shouted to the technicians. Loud and clear, the tech replied, typing furiously. Shipment moving tonight. Bypassing the checkpoint. Inspection schedule. We have him on conspiracy to traffic and unauthorized access to critical infrastructure. Vance grabbed his radio. All units, mobilize. We have a timeline. 200 hours. The target is the rail yard adjacent to the textile depot. This is a code red interception. He looked at me. He nodded. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. It meant, we got him. Trevor sat slumped in his chair, staring at the dead phone. He looked like he was going to be sick. He used me, Trevor whispered. He was talking about shipments, cargo. He is a smuggler. He is worse than a smuggler, I said, standing up and gathering my files. He is a saboteur, and you held the door open for him. The next 6 hours were a blur of controlled chaos. I was moved from the tactical room to a secure observation deck. I could not go to the raid. I was a witness, not a field agent, but I watched the feed. The information Darren had let slip, the shipment moving tonight, combined with the data I had analyzed from the stolen files, allowed the team to triangulate the location. It was not just the textile depot. It was a disused spur line that ran behind the depot, connecting to the main chemical transport artery. The cargo wasn't drugs. It wasn't money. When the Homeland security teams breached the warehouse at 1 a.m, they found crates of high-grade industrial accelerants and timing devices. They were not just moving illegal goods. They were planning to blow the rail line to cover their tracks. The vulnerability I had identified in my report, the one my father had scanned, was the exact spot where an explosion would cause a chain reaction that could level 3 city blocks. Darren Vane was not there, but his crew was, and the digital trail he left on the burner phone led the FBI to a private airstrip in Maryland, where he was waiting for a flight to non-extradition soil. They pulled him off the tarmac 20 minutes before takeoff. It was a victory, a clean, undeniable win for the Bureau. But victories in my line of work are rarely celebrated with champagne. They are celebrated with more paperwork. I was sitting in the hallway of the federal building, drinking terrible vending machine coffee, when Brianna sat down next to me. She looked different. The polished real estate agent veneer was cracked. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. No makeup. She looked like my sister again, not the woman who sold houses she couldn't afford. "They caught him?" she asked softly. "They caught him," I said. "Trevor's call nailed him." "Good," she said. She stared at her hands. "I have to tell you something. Celeste, something about the group chat screenshot I gave you." "What about it?" "I didn't just take it 2 weeks ago," she said. "I have been taking them for months, ever since Dad started talking about leveraging assets. I have a folder on my laptop. Every time they talked about your job, every time they planned to ask you for money, every time they made a joke about your secret life, I saved it." I turned to look at her. "Why?" "Because I was scared," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw Dad changing. He used to be just grumpy, but then he got desperate. The debt ate him alive. And when he looked at you, he didn't see a daughter anymore. He saw a lifeline. He saw a winning lottery ticket that refused to pay out." She reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. "This is everything," she said. "Audio recordings of Sunday dinners where they planned the questions, photos of the bank statements they tried to hide. I kept it because I thought one day I might need to stop them. I thought I could talk them out of it, but I was too weak. I just watched it happen." She placed the drive in my hand. "I am not a hero. Celeste, I am a coward who took notes, but I want you to have this. It proves you weren't crazy. It proves you were the only one telling the truth." I closed my fingers around the cold plastic of the drive. It was heavy. It contained the autopsy of a family. "Thank you," I said. "Do not thank me," she said, standing up. "Use it. They are going to say they didn't mean it. They are going to say it was an accident. Use that drive to burn their lies to the ground." She walked away, leaving me alone in the fluorescent hallway. I thought the hardest part was over. I thought catching the bad guy was the end of the movie. But reality has a way of twisting the knife just when you think you are safe. The next morning, I woke up in the temporary safe house to a notification on my restored phone. It was a link to a local community forum in Briarwood. Topic: The Snitch on Briarwood Lane. I clicked it. My stomach dropped. Someone, a neighbor, a former friend of Trevor's, or maybe just a bored internet troll, had posted my full name, my agency affiliation, and my current temporary address. Celeste Sutherland turned her own parents in for a reward. She works for the deep state. She framed her brother to get a promotion. Here is where she is hiding. Below the text was a photo of me taken from my high school yearbook, side by side with a photo of the safe house exterior. The comments were a cesspool. "Traitor. Family comes first. She is a snake. I hope she rots." I went to the window. Down on the street. A car slowed down. A phone camera pointed up at my window. I pulled the curtains shut. My phone rang. It was Vance. "We saw the post," he said. "We are moving you. Pack your bag. You have 10 minutes. "Who leaked it?" I asked, my voice numb. "We are tracing it," Vance said. "But Celeste, it looks like it came from an account linked to your Aunt Linda." I almost laughed. Of course, the family defense mechanism. If you cannot win in court, you destroy the witness in the street. They couldn't attack the evidence, so they attacked the person. They wanted to make me toxic. They wanted to make the cost of my integrity so high that I would break. I packed my bag. It took 3 minutes. I had learned to travel light. I walked out of the safe house, flanked by 2 agents. I kept my head down. I didn't look at the car slowing down on the street. I didn't look at the neighborhood that used to be my home. I sat in the back of the armored SUV. Vance was in the front seat. "We got Darren," Vance said, looking at me in the rearview mirror. "He is singing like a bird. He is giving up the whole network to cut a deal. You saved a lot of lives. Celeste, I lost my life. I said. I lost my name. I lost my home. You lost a fake life, Vance said firmly. You lost a lie. He turned the car onto the highway, heading toward Daesh. The trial is set for next month, Vance said. The prosecutor is going for the maximum on Gordon. Conspiracy, espionage, fraud. Trevor is looking at 5 to 10, depending on how much he cries on the stand. Marilyn? Well, she is facing obstruction and aiding and abetting. They will plead not guilty, I said. They will say they were just curious parents. Vance smiled. It was a cold, wolfish smile. Let them, he said. Let them play the happy family card. Because we have the audio from Briarwood. We have the USB drive. We have the logs. He looked back at me one last time. We are going to catch Darren. Sure, that is the job. But the real show? The real justice? That happens in the courtroom, when we play those tapes, and the jury hears your father planning to sell you out for $12,000. That is when the truth detonates, and there won't be a roof left on that house. The federal courthouse in Columbus was a monolith of limestone and glass, designed to make human beings feel small and the law feel inevitable. Inside courtroom 4B, the air conditioning was set to a temperature that chilled the sweat on your skin. A physical reminder that comfort had no place here. I sat at the prosecution table next to Assistant United States Attorney Miller. I wore a charcoal suit that I had bought specifically for this day, because it was armor. Across the aisle, at the defense table, sat the people who had raised me. Gordon and Marilyn Sutherland were dressed in their Sunday best. My father wore his navy blazer with the gold buttons, the one he usually reserved for weddings and funerals. My mother wore a pale blue cardigan and a string of pearls, clutching a handkerchief as if it were a talisman against prison time. Trevor sat between them, looking like a ghost in a cheap suit, his eyes darting around the room, landing on everything except me. Their defense strategy, orchestrated by a high-priced lawyer named Sterling whom they could not afford but had hired anyway, likely on another predatory line of credit, was predictable. It was the family-first defense. They were painting a portrait of a misunderstood suburban clan, confused by technology, who had simply stumbled into a misunderstanding with their high-strung, secretive daughter. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Sterling began his opening statement, walking in front of the jury box with a practiced, folksy charm. What we have here is not a spy thriller. It is a tragedy of communication. The government wants you to believe that this 60-year-old grandmother and this retired factory foreman are masterminds. But the truth? The truth is, they are just parents. Parents who were worried about their daughter. Parents who saw some papers on a table, papers that looked like boring shipping schedules, and made a mistake, not a crime. He pointed a finger at me. Celeste Sutherland calls them traitors, but look at them. Do they look like enemies of the state? Or do they look like a family that has been torn apart by a daughter who cares more about her career than her own blood? It was effective. I saw 2 jurors nod sympathetically. Then it was Miller's turn. Miller did not use folksy charm. He used a projector. Exhibit A, Miller said, his voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. A massive image appeared on the screen. It was the scanned PDF of the Textile Depot blueprint recovered from Trevor's cloud drive. Mr. Sterling calls these boring shipping schedules, Miller said. But let us look closer. He zoomed in on the center of the document. There, stamped in faint but unmistakable red ink across the background, was a watermark. FRCB. Classified. Tier 4, do not distribute penalty of law. 18 U.S. Code Section 793. This is not fine print, Miller said to the jury. This is not a footer. This is a watermark that covers the entire page. You cannot read the document without reading the warning. To claim ignorance of this marking is to claim you are blind. Miller clicked a button. The image changed. Exhibit B. The upload log from the device belonging to Trevor Sutherland. The screen showed a timeline. Sunday, 8:05 in the morning. Document scanned. Sunday, 8:07 in the morning. Upload to cloud. Sunday, 8:10 in the morning. Link generated. Sunday, 8:12 in the morning. Link sent to contact Darren. And finally, Miller said, Exhibit C. He put up a photo of the sticky note I had found on the floor, the one with the jagged handwriting. Scale it up. This note was written by Trevor Sutherland, Miller said. It was found in his sister's locked bedroom. This was not a passive discovery on a coffee table. This was an invasion. They entered a secured room. They bypassed a lock. They removed documents. And they disseminated them to a known criminal contact within 7 minutes. Miller turned to the defense table. That is not confusion, Miller said. That is a heist. The tension in the room ratcheted up. Gordon's face was a mask of simmering fury. Marilyn was weeping silently, dabbing her eyes with the handkerchief. Sterling called me to the stand after the lunch recess. He knew he could not fight the watermarks, so he decided to fight me. Ms. Sutherland, Sterling said, leaning on the podium. Let us talk about Sunday morning. You say you locked your door. I did. But you also admit you were tired. You had been working all night. Is it possible, just possible, that you forgot? I did not forget to lock the door, I said. I forgot to spin the combination dials on the briefcase, but the door to the room was locked. My father has a master key. He admitted to using it in the past. Objection, Sterling said. Speculation. Sustained, the judge muttered. Sterling smiled. You work for a very secretive agency, don't you? Celeste, you cannot tell your family what you do. That is correct. And that creates distance, doesn't it? Secrecy breeds mistrust. It creates boundaries, I corrected. Boundaries are necessary for safety. But your mother, Sterling softened his voice, looking at the jury, she just wanted to be close to you, didn't she? She felt you pulling away. Is it so hard to believe that she looked at those papers not to sell secrets, but just to understand what consumed her daughter's life? I looked at Marilyn. She looked back at me, her eyes pleading. Say yes. Her eyes said, just say I was a nosy mother. Do not send me to prison. I leaned into the microphone. She wanted to understand, I said clearly. But understanding requires a question. It requires conversation, breaking into a room, photographing documents, and uploading them to a server is not an attempt to understand. It is an attempt to exploit. She is your mother, Sterling snapped, dropping the facade. Do you have no gratitude? No loyalty? Loyalty does not mean complicity, I said. And being a mother does not give you the right to sell your child's integrity for $10,000. Sterling froze. The jury gasped. The figure, $10,000, hung in the air. No further questions, Sterling said quickly, trying to retreat before the damage got worse. But the damage was done. The prosecution had already entered the bank records into evidence, but saying it out loud, linking the betrayal directly to the cash, made it real. Then came the moment that broke the room. The prosecution called Trevor Sutherland as a hostile witness. Trevor walked to the stand. He looked like he was vibrating. His skin was pale, clammy. He sat down and gripped the railing as if the floor were tilting. Miller approached him. Mr. Sutherland, Miller said, you claimed in your initial statement that you scanned the documents to use in a marketing pitch. Is that correct? Yes, Trevor whispered. And you claimed you did not know the contact. Darren Vane was a criminal. Yes. Miller picked up a piece of paper. It was the transcript of the call we had recorded in the tactical room, the call where Darren mentioned the shipment and the checkpoints. We have a recording, Miller said, where Mr. Vane explicitly discusses bypassing security checkpoints using the data you provided. He tells you to delete the link, and you agree. You apologize to him. Trevor licked his lips. I was scared. I was just trying to get him to stop. Mr. Sutherland, Miller said, stepping closer. We also have the chat logs recovered from the cloud backup, the ones your sister provided. He held up the screenshot Brianna had saved. The Operation Rainy Day chat. Can you read this text from your father? Gordon Sutherland. Dated Sunday morning at 7:15? Trevor looked at the paper. He did not read it. He just stared at it. "Read it, please," Miller commanded. Trevor's voice was barely audible. He wrote, "Wait for her to run, then scan fast. We need that transfer by Monday, or the bank takes the car." Miller let the silence stretch. "The bank takes the car," Miller repeated. So this was not for a marketing pitch, was it? This was for money. Urgent money. Trevor started to cry. It was an ugly, jagged sound. "I did not want to do it." "But you did it," Miller said. "Why?" "Because he told me to," Trevor shouted. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Order!" Trevor pointed a shaking finger at Gordon. "He told me we were going to lose the house," Trevor sobbed, the words tumbling out in a hysterical rush. "He sat me down on Saturday night. He showed me the foreclosure notice. He said Celeste had plenty of money. He said she was selfish. He said if I did not get the files for Darren, we would be on the street in 30 days. Gordon stood up at the defense table. His face was purple. "Shut up! You shut your mouth!" "Sit down! Mr. Sutherland!" the judge roared. Marshals moved toward the defense table. But Trevor was not stopping. The dam had broken. "I told him it was dangerous!" Trevor screamed, tears streaming down his face. "I told him the file had red stamps on it, but he said it didn't matter. He said, just get a corner of the map. Just get the basement. He made me practice with the scanner app on a magazine until I could do it in 10 seconds. He turned to me. He looked at me with eyes that were full of terror and regret. "I am sorry. Celeste," he choked out. "I am sorry. I was just so scared of him. He said I was the man of the house if I fixed this. He said I would be the hero." I looked at my brother. I did not feel hate. I felt a profound, hollow sadness. He was 28 years old, but in that moment, he was just a child who had been bullied by his father into holding a loaded gun. Miller turned to the jury. "The prosecution rests." The judge looked at the defense table. Sterling was rubbing his temples. He knew it was over. Gordon was staring at the table. His jaw clenched so hard, I thought his teeth would shatter. "And Marilyn?" Marilyn stood up. "Mrs. Sutherland, sit down," the judge ordered. "I just wanted to say," she said, her voice trembling, addressing the room, addressing me. I thought they were just files. I thought—" She looked at me, and for the first time, the mask of the victim slipped, revealing the terrifying delusion underneath. "I thought it was just basic work," she whispered. "Just some papers. Why did you have to make it so real? Celeste, why couldn't you just let us have the files?" It was the most damning thing she could have said. Even in the face of her son's confession, even facing prison, she still believed that my reality should have bent to accommodate their needs. She still believed that her need for money trumped the safety of the world. "That is enough," the judge said, his voice cold. "Court is adjourned until 10 in the morning for sentencing discussions. Bail is revoked for all defendants. Remand them into custody." The sound of the gavel striking the wood was final. It sounded like a door slamming shut on my past. I watched as the marshals moved in. They handcuffed Gordon, who did not look at anyone. They handcuffed Trevor, who was still weeping. They handcuffed Marilyn, who looked at me one last time with a look of pure, unadulterated confusion, as if she were still waiting for me to fix it. I turned and walked out. The hallway of the courthouse was long and echoey. My footsteps clicked on the marble floor. I did not feel triumphant. You do not feel triumphant when you cut off a limb to save the body. You just feel the phantom pain. I pushed through the heavy double doors and stepped out into the afternoon sun. The light was blinding. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust and city dust, but it felt clean. It felt like my own air. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A single, sharp vibration. I pulled it out. It was a secure message from the FRCB notification system. Priority alert. Update incident. Sector 4. Rail compromise. Status, Threat neutralized. I opened the details. Field report. Based on intelligence recovered from the Vane network and cross-referenced with analyst Sutherland's initial threat assessment, EOD teams successfully located and defused 3 incendiary devices placed on the structural supports of the Briarwood spur line. Detonation was timed for 1700 hours today. Casualty estimate, if detonation occurred, 400 civilians. Critical infrastructure loss, 100%. Note: the specific geolocation of the devices matched the red-circled coordinates in the recovered documents. Your data prevented the attack. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking. Just a little. If I had stayed silent. If I had accepted the family-first lie. If I had let them convince me that I was overreacting, that it was just a map, that I was being mean to my mother, 400 people would be dead. The train would have derailed. The chemical cloud would have blanketed the suburb. Marilyn asked if it was worth it. She asked if basic files were worth destroying the family. I looked at the screen again. 400 civilians. I put the phone back in my pocket. It was not just worth it. It was the only thing that mattered. I walked down the steps of the courthouse, alone, and for the first time in my life, I did not look back. The gavel did not sound like a thunderclap. It sounded like a wooden period placed at the end of a very long, very ugly sentence. 3 months had passed since the raid on Briarwood Lane. In that time, the seasons had changed from the crisp bite of late winter to the muddy thaw of early spring, mirroring the slow, sludgy process of dismantling a criminal conspiracy. The capture of Darren Vane had been the domino that toppled the entire structure. He was arrested in a transit lounge in Panama, 2 hours before he could board a flight to a country with no extradition treaty. He did not go down fighting. Men like Darren never do. He went down negotiating. He traded names, dates, and access codes for a cell with a window, through his confession. The full scope of the textile depot operation was laid bare. It was not just about smuggling. It was an arbitrage scheme. Darren's network would identify critical infrastructure vulnerabilities, like the gas pressure valves in the depot basement, and then arrange for accidents to occur. A derailment here, a chemical leak there. They would short-sell the stock of the logistics companies involved just hours before the disaster, making millions while the rest of the world panicked. My family had not just been selling a floor plan. They had been selling the match to light a fuse that would have burned down the regional economy. Standing in the courtroom for the sentencing hearing, I listened as the judge read the facts into the record. It was clinical. It was cold. It stripped away all the emotional padding of family and left only the raw, jagged mechanics of the crime. Trevor stood up first. My brother had aged 5 years and 3 months. The arrogance was gone, scrubbed away by the reality of federal detention. He had pleaded guilty to 1 count of unauthorized transmission of defense information and 1 count of conspiracy, because his call to Darren had been the key to stopping the bombing. The prosecution had recommended leniency. "Miss Sutherland," the judge said, peering over his glasses, "you were a pawn, but a pawn can still topple a king. You chose greed over the safety of your community. You chose to ignore the clear warnings of your sister because you felt entitled to her success." Trevor nodded. He did not cry. He just looked at his hands. "I sentence you to 36 months in a federal correctional institution, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are barred from using any internet-connected device without monitoring for the duration of your probation." 3 years. He would miss his 30s. He would miss the prime of his career. But he would be alive. And more importantly, he would be away from Gordon. Next was my father. Gordon Sutherland did not stand up. He had to be helped to his feet by his attorney. The man who had terrorized our dinner table with his booming voice and his demands for respect was now a hollow shell. The forensic accounting had revealed that he was not just in debt. He had embezzled money from the local homeowners association to pay the interest on his credit cards, before turning to espionage. "Gordon Sutherland," the judge's voice hardened. "You are the architect of this tragedy. You preyed on your own children. You used your son's desperation and your daughter's trust as currency. There is no greater betrayal for a parent than to weaponize their home against their offspring. Gordon stared at the floor. He could not look at me. He could not look at Trevor. I sentence you to 144 months, 12 years, no possibility of parole. A gasp went through the gallery. 12 years. He would be an old man when he came out. He would likely die in prison. The house on Briarwood Lane, the house he was so desperate to save that he sold his soul for it, was already in foreclosure. It would be sold at auction to pay for his legal fees. Finally, Marilyn. My mother stood. She was shaking. Her pearls were gone, replaced by the simple blouse she had been allowed to wear for court. Marilyn Sutherland, the judge said, your counsel argues that you were merely a passive observer, that you just wanted to keep the peace, but the evidence shows otherwise. You kept the watch. You managed the schedule. You emotionally manipulated a federal agent to lower her guard. Marilyn looked at me then. Her eyes were wide, filled with a terrifying mix of fear and accusation. I sentence you to 5 years of probation, 2,000 hours of community service, and a fine of $50,000. You are also subject to a permanent restraining order regarding Celeste Sutherland. You are not to contact her, approach her, or attempt to communicate with her in any way. The judge banged the gavel. This court is adjourned. It was over. I did not stay to watch the bailiffs take them away. I walked out of the courtroom, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the floor. I felt light, not happy, but light. The weight of the secret, the weight of the basic work files, the weight of their expectations. It was all gone. Brianna was waiting for me in the hallway. She had not been charged. Her cooperation, and the trove of evidence she provided from her laptop, had bought her immunity, but she had paid a price too. She was the rat in the eyes of our extended family. Aunt Linda had spat on her car in the grocery store parking lot. They are gone, Brianna said softly as I approached. For a long time, I said. She looked at me. I am moving. Celeste, I cannot stay in Ohio. Mark and I are going to Arizona. Start over. Sell houses where nobody knows the name Sutherland. That sounds smart, I said. You should come, she offered. Not now, but maybe later. Visit. There is a lot of sun. I smiled. It was a real smile, small but genuine. Maybe. I have work to do here first. She hugged me. It was stiff, awkward, but it was real. For the first time in our lives, we were not competing for our parents' attention. We were survivors of it. Take care of yourself, Celeste, she whispered, and lock your doors. Always, I said. I walked out to the parking garage. The afternoon sun was slanting through the concrete slats, creating bars of light and shadow on the gray floor. I walked toward my rental car. Celeste, the voice stopped me. It was not a shout. It was a question. I turned around. Marilyn was standing by the elevator bank. Her probation officer was a few steps behind her, looking impatient, checking his watch. This was the transition moment, the few minutes before she was processed into the system and taken to the halfway house where she would live for the first 6 months. She looked small, the power she used to hold, the power of guilt, the power of mother knows best, had evaporated. She was just an elderly woman in a polyester blouse who had made terrible choices. I am not supposed to talk to you, she said, her voice trembling. No, I said. You are not? I just have one question, she said. She took a step forward, into a patch of sunlight. I just need to know, because I cannot sleep. Celeste, I cannot understand it. She looked at me with that same bewildered expression she had worn when the SWAT team kicked down the door. Was it worth it? She asked. You put your father in prison. You put your brother in a cage. You made your mother a felon. All for what? For some papers? For a job? Was it worth it? Celeste? To trade your whole family for a few basic files? The question hung in the dusty air of the garage. It was the question the audience had been waiting for. It was the question that had kept me awake for nights. It was the weapon she had been sharpening in her mind for 3 months. She wanted me to say no. She wanted me to break. She wanted me to fall to my knees and apologize so she could finally feel like the martyr she believed she was. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had distracted me with photo albums while my father drilled a hole in my wall. I looked at the woman who had baked a cake to cover the sound of a scanner. Yes, I said. My voice was not loud. It did not echo, but it was steady. Marilyn flinched as if I had struck her. How can you say that? How can you be so cold? It was not about the files. Mom, I said. It never was. Then what? She cried. What was it about? It was about the line, I said. You asked if it was worth it to trade the family for the files. But you got the equation wrong. I didn't trade you. You traded me. I took a step closer, not aggressively, but with the finality of a closing door. You sold me for $12,000, I said. You sold my safety. You sold my trust. And if I had let it go, if I had said, it is just family, and looked the other way, what would you have sold next? Marilyn opened her mouth, but no words came out. If I had let you get away with the depot, I continued. Next month, it would have been the airport, then the water treatment plant, because the debt wasn't going away, Mom, and neither was your entitlement. I thought about the report on my phone, the 400 people who would have been in the blast radius. If I had protected you, I said, 400 people would be dead tonight. Families who actually love each other, parents who don't spy on their children. I saved them, and to save them, I had to stop you. We are your blood, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Blood is biology, I said. Loyalty is a choice, and you chose Darren Vane. I turned back to my car. Goodbye, Marilyn, I said. I did not call her Mom. I could not. That title belonged to a woman who didn't exist anymore. I got into the car, locked the doors, and drove away. I watched her in the rearview mirror, a shrinking figure in the concrete box, until I turned the corner and she was gone. The drive back to the city was quiet. I did not go back to Briarwood. I drove to a new building in the Navy Yard district. It was a secure complex. Keycard access, 24-hour doorman, cameras in the hallways. I took the elevator to the 12th floor. My new apartment was sparse. I had not unpacked everything yet. The walls were white. The furniture was modern and functional. It did not smell like Lemon Pledge and old secrets. It smelled like nothing. It smelled like peace. I walked to the desk by the window. On the desk sat a new briefcase. It was titanium, biometric, heavy. I sat down. I placed my thumb on the scanner. The latch hissed open. Inside lay my new assignment, a thick folder with a red stripe, a promotion, Deputy Director of Strategic Analysis. Livia Hart had given it to me quietly, in her office, with no ceremony. You passed the hardest test there is, she had said. Most people can keep secrets from their enemies. Very few can keep them from their loved ones. I took the folder out. I read the cover sheet. It was a risk assessment for the Eastern Power Grid. I placed the folder on the desk. I looked out the window. The sun was setting over the Potomac River, turning the water into a sheet of liquid gold. I was alone. I had no Sunday dinners to go to. I had no group chat to check. I had no parents to call, to the outside world. I was a woman who had lost everything, but as I looked at the city lights flickering on, one by one, protected by the work I did in this quiet room, I didn't feel lost. I reached for the briefcase. I placed the folder inside. I closed the lid. Click, click. I spun the left dial, 942. I spun the right dial, 618. I checked it, locked, secure. They had called it basic. They had laughed at my precautions. They had mocked my boundaries. But those boundaries were the only things that kept the world from burning. They called it basic, I said to the empty room, my voice calm and final. But that basic work stripped the mask off everything. I stood up and walked to the kitchen to make tea. For the first time in 34 years, the air in the room was entirely my own, and it tasted like freedom. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment down below sharing your location and your thoughts on Celeste's decision. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel Nina Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit the like button to help this story reach even more people.